Kicking off the list at number 10, Harley Cinn. Constance Brand, aka Harley Cinn, is the daughter of a billionaire, so you already know she's going to be trouble. Harley Cinn first came around in 2016, making her first appearance back in Gang of Harleys issue 1. First of all, the look of Harley Cinn, I'm here for it. She's got that Rocky Horror Picture Show vibe, she's a badass. The second issue, titled Hit 'Em Where It Hurts, we see the tattooed badass punk put in some work. She meets Harley Quinn, and during a fun little introduction panel, we see Cinn say the words, "I'm the person that's going to be killing each and every one of your useless gang." So right off the hop, she's kind of a big deal. I don't know, she's in a bad mood. So this rich billionaire father I mentioned earlier, yeah, Harley Cinn's father in fact is believed to be Donald Trump, or at least he was drawn and characterized to resemble him. That plus the tattoos, drug addictions, and lust for violence, you got yourselves quite the villain. And before we move on to number 9, make sure if you guys haven't done so already to go ahead and click that like button. It helps us out a bunch here at the studio, and it's this one, not this one. Unless you're a Spider-Man, then maybe it's that one. Go ahead and click that one.
Number 9, Grail. Grail is the villainous daughter of Darkseid and basically acts as an opposing force to Wonder Woman. The two women were born at exactly the same time, and it was prophesied that Grail, the daughter of Darkseid, and Myrna would bring about much destruction. As such, she was almost killed as soon as she was born, but her mother protected her. She proved almost right away in the comics that she was a new villain worthy of our time when she made easy work of the Justice League. She and Diana ended up facing off shortly thereafter, but their fight was interrupted. However, they would continue to clash during the Darkseid War, and likely will keep doing so, as Grail was basically designed to be the perfect foil for Wonder Woman. Grail was first introduced in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 40.
And number 8, Godspeed. August Hart, aka Godspeed, made his first debut not too long ago in The Flash Rebirth Volume 2, Issue 1. With a name like Godspeed, one can only assume the powers in which they'll contain. Super speed, which is also my favorite superpower on the low. Created by Joshua Williamson and Carmine Di Giandomenico, sorry if I butchered that name, I tried 7 times. Godspeed stands out from the rest of the speedsters because of one badass reason. He can separate speedsters from the Speed Force. Now if you watch the CW's Arrowverse, you know what I'm talking about already. August Hart was also a detective, a former partner of Barry Allen, to be frank. And then along comes a force storm in Central City, and all of a sudden you have these godlike powers. Pretty ideal powers for a hero, and also a villain. That's right, as you would have guessed by clicking this video, he doubles as a villain on the low. So he became the Flash's partner while secretly becoming Godspeed the villain. Not cool, dude. Why'd the villain move though? Well, when August's brother was murdered by a criminal, he was released due to insubstantial evidence. So August decides to confront the Black Hole organization after they had stolen property from Star Labs. He sees their symbol that resembles one at his brother's crime scene. Interesting. So while confronting him, that's when the Speed Force lightning strikes. I feel like if I was a speedster, I would just be like Quicksilver. I'd hang out in the basement, play some stolen video games. Is it really that hard to just chill out? I know you're angry, but like, it's all good. Speed walk it off.
Number 7, Giganta. You expect Giganta to be strong, of course, considering she is a gigantic woman, but I also feel like she's a villain that is more often than not forgotten by people. So while you might expect the strength to come along with her, you just wouldn't really expect her at all most days. Dora Zul was attempting to cure her rare blood disease that she was born with by experimenting on herself. Her mad scientist ways caused her to end up in a conflict with Wonder Woman, and later caused her to also become the villain she is today. In the original continuity of New Earth, Doris abducted the body of a strong woman named Olga, putting her own consciousness into that body and gaining the ability to grow in size when her plot to steal Wonder Woman's body had failed her.
Number 6. Automatopoeia. Now I personally love a good automatopoeia, but hey, I will take a bad one every now and then, and that is exactly what this villain is. He is a serial killer that specifically targets non-powered heroes, and he is so aptly named because he imitates the noises around him, such as his gunfire or the dripping water. He is also seen to be surprisingly durable for a human, able to take 6 arrows without slowing him down, and drop at least 7 stories and just keep on running. Now this highly trained villain is one of the most clever out there, not only attacking Oliver Queen's son Connor, but fooling Batman so much that he reveals his own identity. And also in true villain fashion, he messed with Batman even further by killing his fiancée Silver St. Cloud, slitting her throat while imitating the sound Batman's utility belt makes.
Number 5. Punchline. Punchline is a newer villain on the scene and as such has definitely been underestimated. But honestly, it's this attitude that only serves to fuel Punchline's desire to prove that she is actually worthy of all of that hype. As far as we know, she is like Joker, a non-powered human being. Punchline typically fights with small stiletto blades, and despite only being in a few issues so far, she has managed to slit Harley Quinn's throat and create her own specific brew of Joker venom just for Batman, which has succeeded in making him go pretty crazy recently. Imagining Alfred is still alive and still on his communique systems, despite the fact that, you know, he's very dead.
Number 4. Amazo. A super deadly android designed by the insane in the membrane scientist Professor Ivo that acts as an enemy to the Justice League. Thanks to its synthetic body, Amazo is capable of replicating anything about a person in its general vicinity, including their powers and skills, so you can probably understand why this android is so powerful and so dangerous. Amazo has been shown duplicating the powers and skills of Superman, Green Lantern, Zatanna, Black Canary, Elongated Man, and so many more, meaning his arsenal of powers to choose from is absolutely ridiculous. Not only that, he also has the ability to temporarily negate the powers of the hero that he's mimicking. So, for example, he could strip Superman of his powers for a finite amount of time and just pummel him into the dirt. That is absolutely insane if you ask me, and that is why he is on this list today.
Number 3. Harley Quinn. In Batman the Animated Series, Harley Quinn unintentionally pissed off the Joker because she proved just how valuable of a partner in crime she was, and how capable she is as a villain without even the Joker's help, and has also done so with her pal Poison Ivy. Though of course Harley and Ivy just believed they had kidnapped millionaire Bruce Wayne at the time and made him take them on a shopping spree. But still, that's pretty impressive. While many also think that Harley is always moving closer to becoming more soft and more of a hero than a baddie, let's not forget when she executed one of the most villainous plots, also without the Joker, killing tons of children across Gotham with free explosives that were disguised as video games, simply because she was bored and sort of feeling lost in terms of what to do with herself. So yeah, don't underestimate Harley Quinn.
Number 2. The Reverse Flash. Eobard Thawne, one of the many speedsters that you'll find scattered throughout time and space in the DC universe. Also known as Professor Zoom, this biggest Flash fanatic to ever live is capable of basically all the things that the Flash and his Speed family can do. You know, like time travel, super speed, and electrokinesis. But what really sets him apart is his ability to completely negate another's connection to the Speed Force, effectively stripping his fellow speedsters of their powers and rendering them honestly useless. His most impressive feat though would probably be when he, you know, set the entirety of the New 52 in motion by creating the Flashpoint timeline. Almost every hero and villain dies in some gruesome death thanks to the circumstances of this new universe, and yeah, that's pretty scary if you ask me.
Number 1. Lex Luthor. Now when you boil it down, Lex Luthor is just a dude. He's just a bald dude who has a big beef with Superman. Whether that's because he doesn't like the fact that Superman's an alien, or he blames Superman for his hair loss, depending on the comics you're reading. The fact remains that his brilliant intellect puts him in the running to be one of the strongest, most powerful, and definitely most iconic Superman villains of all time. The fact that 1. Luthor is also a human who keeps one of the most superpowered heroes, Superman, on his toes, and that 2. He managed to convince the country, despite being a supervillain, to vote him in as president are both pretty impressive.
Coming in at number 10 today is Ultron. How can you really pass away if you were never technically alive to begin with? Over time, Ultron has definitely taken on more squishy bodies, like when he became half Hank Pym, but for the most part, Ultron as a villain has been pretty much entirely unkillable, if you could even describe him that way. A large part of this has to do with his program transmitter. Located in his head cavity, the program transmitter can project Ultron's entire 3.2 terabyte memory and personality system into some computer systems. He can beam part or all of his programming into remote locations such as computers or alternate robotic bodies, and has used this ability to create and control entire armies of himself, to move himself into other bodies if he's destroyed, and he's even used it to implant directives into his own creations to rebuild Ultron if he is ever actually destroyed. But that alone is a pretty hard thing enough to do, because normally Ultron's outer outer shell is made entirely of adamantium, one of the strongest metals in the entire Marvel universe. On top of that though, Ultron is almost always improving himself, upgrading his body, programming, and abilities, while also spreading his influence further and deeper into the cosmos. Number 9. The One Below All. The One Below All is a relatively recent addition to the comics, but the idea of the entity isn't, as we have known about the One Above All for a while, and his mere existence begs the question of who inhabits the opposite side of the spectrum. Thanks to the Immortal Hulk storyline, we now know it is utterly terrifying. He resides in the Below Place, and his power has been manifesting itself for decades in the form of gamma mutates like the Hulk. In the story, we do get brief glimpses of what could actually happen if the embodiment of destruction and nothingness were to be set loose on the multiverse. Basically, the One Below All completely takes over the body of the Immortal Hulk, and using this body, he brings an end to the current version of the multiverse, destroying literally everything and everyone over billions of years, including the very essence of life and the multiverse itself. So that when the multiverse is rebirthed into its new version, it is the last time it can truly even happen. With the Hulk / One Below All / Breaker of Worlds consuming everything to grow to a massive planetary scale, wiping out all of existence. But thanks to some time / reality traveling bugs, this does not come to pass, but it could, and that's all you need to know. Number 8. Apocalypse. If it wasn't for his goal of mutant domination and evolution, Apocalypse would vaporize the X-Men whenever he wanted to, and even if that wasn't how he did it, he has the capacity to wipe out the X-Men in a whole handful of ways. For starters, Apocalypse is what is called an external. These are beings, mostly mutants, who are immortal, share a psychic connection, and who can revive themselves. So he can just never be permanently taken down, and he has been around for about 5,000 years. Apocalypse's original mutant ability was to be able to control his own molecular structure, but over time, with the mentality of survival of the fittest, he has enhanced his abilities and even gained new ones through the use of celestial technology, celestial armor, and at least 2 techno-organic viruses. He can do a lot with his molecular manipulation, including heal himself and turn his limbs into simple melee weapons, but also technologically complex weapons like plasma cannons. But I think the most impressive thing he can do is consciously and subconsciously grant himself a huge amount of mutant powers at will. That makes him too much for most heroes to handle already, and we haven't even talked about his celestial energy manipulation, his psionic abilities, or any of his countless horsemen of the apocalypse, all of whom were given power boosts by this unstoppable mutant. Number 7. Maestro. The Incredible Hulk has certainly been through the ringer in his decorated career, but few versions of the character are the living embodiment of that fact like the Maestro. An alternate version of Bruce Banner from an apocalyptic future, the Maestro is far more intense and complex than his Earth 616 counterpart. The best way to describe Maestro is to say that he is basically a smarter, older, villainous version of Dr. Bruce Banner with all the powers and abilities of the original, but with a touch more nuclear radiation. Now I don't know if you know, but the Hulk is actually immortal. As a gamma mutate with a connection to the Below Place, Bruce Banner and Hulk learned he possessed the ability to commandeer his own recovery rate. One time Hulk had been pulled apart and put into several different jars, only to literally compel his own body to come back together by sheer force of will. The Hulk, and by extension Maestro, is capable of regenerating damaged or destroyed areas of his entire body with much greater speed and efficiency than any of us can do. The Hulk was also able to systematically regenerate his internal organs and tissues, and was also able to literally rip off a large fraction of his own head, allowing it to completely regrow. The Maestro himself was able to molecularly rebuild his own body after being atomized. The Hulk has survived to be the only living human being left on the entire Earth in Hulk the End, so immortality for this guy is a big old checkmark.
In at 6, Mephisto. Yes, Mephisto is actually in this list. Your theories were right this time. Mephisto, an extra-dimensional demon, presides over a fiery pocket dimension he refers to as Hell, or Hades. However, it differs from the actual Christian concept of Hell, which is governed by Pluto in Greek mythology. Like Hades is governed by Pluto in Greek mythology. It's a separate thing, okay? Mephisto strategically labels his realm as Hell to capitalize on the belief you know, God, the devil, all of that stuff. So he's creating himself in the illusion of just absolute evil, which is, yeah, it's a good marketing strat. It's like the Blair Witch of demon marketing. His appearance typically resembles just a traditional demon, but it remains uncertain whether it's actually what he looks like or if this is just something that he throws on when he's going to the ball, because, you know, he's like, oh yeah, I'm the devil, so I'm gonna look like a devil. He also accepts names that are just contributed to being devils, you know, like Mephisto is derived from Mephistopheles in the Faust legends and stuff like that. Just basically anything you want to call the devil or any name you have for the devil, he accepts. He's chill like that. But the freaking devil? Yeah, if history has taught us anything, you can't really stop the devil. The devil stops you.
Number 5. Apocalypse. When it comes to X-Men villains, Apocalypse is one of the best around. Definitely one of the most inevitable. Sure, right now, he's more on the side of good because he's been unified by the cause that is known as Krakoa, the Mutant Nation, but I'm just waiting for the moment that he moves once more from an ally to an unbeatable villain. When it comes to Apocalypse, part of the reason why he is so hard to defeat comes from the fact that his mutant ability alone makes it nearly impossible to do so. Apocalypse basically has evolutionary sort of powers that allow him to adapt to almost any setting, bolster his strength and durability over time. His inherent ability allowed him to control his body at an atomic level when we're talking about his pure mutant ability, allowing him to adjust his body as needed depending on the circumstances of the fight that he's in. Add in the fact that his powers have been augmented by celestial technology over time, and the fact that he's also fully absorbed two different techno-organic viruses into himself, with his body overpowering and fully encompassing them into his own makeup. And yeah, you can see why he makes our cut. Oh, did I mention that Apocalypse also has a long history with magic? Because that's also a thing now in the comics.
And for Carnage. When the Venom symbiote came to rescue its host Eddie Brock from jail, it left an asexually produced offspring behind. That spawn then bonded to Cletus Cassidy, who was a renowned serial killer in the Marvel Universe, through a wound in his hand, merging with his blood and becoming red and black in color. Now going by the name Carnage, Cletus returned to, you know, being a serial killer, but this time with superpowers. Yeah, he's a recurring enemy, and quite the deadly one at that, okay? Eventually Carnage fought Spider-Man, and Spider-Man was defeated, realizing that Carnage was just another symbiote though. He called on Venom to help, and then they were able to defeat him. But like still, okay? He had to get his enemies to help to defeat Carnage. That's weird. Spider-Man later also used loud noises to defeat both of them, but like that's just kind of a cheap shot in my opinion. But thanks to Cletus' psychopathic tendencies and the fact that he was created on Earth, he has more abilities than his father. A lot more. Like the ability to shoot projectiles out of his hands and then forming like razor sharp weapons on his hands to tear through innocents and enemies with chef-like precision, I might add. Yeah. Plus, Carnage can't be killed with fire, so that's definitely a vote in his favor. The dude's a serial killer who got superpowers. Yeah, that's pretty freaking unstoppable, and he's a fan favorite. Plot armor.
Number 3. Dark Phoenix. Probably the worst villain around and one of the most powerful ones out there has to be Dark Phoenix. The Phoenix Force is an interesting character entity because when it operates in a hero role, it's actually one of the most powerful forces of good in the cosmos. But with the ultimate power of the Phoenix also comes the temptation to lose control to it and turn dark. When this does happen, you are looking at a power that is epic enough to end all worlds and threatens to bring the very universe to its knees. Really, it all lies in the host that the Phoenix Force takes. The cosmic entity itself is really neither good nor bad on its own. But once someone becomes corrupted by its darker side, good luck trying to stop them or control them. In most cases, you have to hope that the Force either leaves the host of its own will and moves on to someone else, or that the person chooses to sacrifice themselves to protect others and regains enough control to even be able to do that.
But ultimately, in number 2, Green Goblin. Speaking of how many times will they come back from the dead. After gaining heightened strength, intellect, and regenerative abilities thanks to the formula that he took to become Goblin, Norman Osborn survived being impaled by his glider, but you know, no one knew. Escaping the morgue, he concealed his identity and evaded capture to flee to Europe. And then he comes back, because of course he does, he's freaking the Green Goblin, and then his secret gets exposed to the world. But despite this, he ends up getting captured and imprisoned, but then manages to escape again, And then during the last jailbreak, S.H.I.E.L.D. apprehended him near France and then returned him to his highly secured cell now, initially held in the raft. Norman continued to grapple with the goblin in his brain, but he ends up escaping again. You know the drill by now. He was secretly moved to a special containment center where he encountered the father of Colmir, but like, come on, okay? He ends up escaping every single freaking time because he's the Green Goblin and he's Spider-Man's like most famous villain and he's like the most iconic one. So yeah, they're not gonna kill him off or they're not gonna permanently stop him because he's such a moneymaker. Are you kidding me? Half of the people who went to see No Way Home went to see No Way Home because of the Green Goblin. You know I'm right.
Number 1, Juggernaut. I mean, come on. It's in the name. I have to include Juggernaut on this list. While he might not have the ability to fully control and manipulate the atoms that make him up like Apocalypse, or to warp reality like the Phoenix Force, and he might not be quite as iconic as someone like the Green Goblin, I would still consider him to be the most unstoppable villain around, considering he is literally known as the unstoppable Juggernaut. That being said, lately in the comics, Cain Marko has actually been turning over a new leaf, but this also goes to show how unstoppable he is, not just in his body, but also in his mind, with him setting out to become more of a heroic figure and even rebelling against Cyttorak, who he was once the avatar of. Cain has become so unstoppable, not even Cyttorak can control him now, with Cain using materials that Cyttorak left on Earth to forge his new armor. As such, Juggernaut is no longer Cyttorak's agent tied to his will, but instead is actually free to choose his own path. As a villain though, Juggernaut also still happens to be one of the hardest villains to beat, whether he's linked to Cyttorak at the time or not.
At number 10 is the obvious Venom. Born from the unholy union of an alien symbiote and the embittered reporter Eddie Brock, this malevolent force emerged as an embodiment of Peter Parker's absolute worst fears. In the comics, Venom's sinister plot unfurled in the shadowy corners of New York City as he relentlessly pursued a vendetta against our friendly neighborhood hero. Armed with intimate knowledge of Peter's life, Venom's malevolence reached chilling heights. He would haunt Aunt May's doorstep, casting an eerie shadow over her once safe haven, and sent shivers down Mary Jane's spine in the very home she shared with the web-slinger. Now, while Venom recently has undergone a reluctant transformation into an anti-hero, his origins continue to haunt Spider-Man's psyche, proving even that in the world of comics, nightmares can endure. At number 9 is Morbius the Living Vampire. Introduced in 1971 with the Amazing Spider-Man 101, Morbius is no ordinary vampire. He's a scientist turned blood-sucking bad boy due to a failed experiment which aimed to extend his life by curing his rare red bodily fluid disease. This tragic transformation adds depth to his character, making him both terrifying and sympathetic. And fun fact, Morbius actually appears during that same story arc that had Spider-Man grow 2 extra pairs of arms. Yup, the 6-arm saga, which is terrifying in itself, saw Spider-Man accidentally give himself extra limbs after trying to get rid of his powers, because that flows logically, but he only managed to cure himself thanks to an enzyme in the vampire. Anyways, Morbius's blend of science and horror taps into our fear of losing control over our humanity. Battles with Spider-Man challenge not just the hero's physical abilities, but also his moral compass. This complex antagonist pushes us to ponder the boundaries of good and evil. And if you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Demogoblin. One can't help but shudder at the sinister transformation of the Hobgoblin into the Demogoblin. I mean, the Hobgoblin was already scary enough, just jeez. This haunting tale unfolds when the Hobgoblin, desperate for the power to vanquish the wall crawler once and for all, entertains a diabolical bargain with Nazareth, a demon of malevolent stature. But rather than directly claiming his soul, Nazareth opts for an unholy possession, forever intertwining the Hobgoblin with this demonic entity. Within the Hobgoblin's shell, an otherworldly struggle ensues, leading to the expulsion of the infernal force. Yet, instead of retreating to the abyss, the vanquished demon materializes as this ghastly Demogoblin. Driven by an inexplicable yearning for redemption, the Demogoblin embarks on a ghastly crusade targeting sinners of all kinds, from ruthless unalivers to mere fibbers, as it seeks to carve its way back to the celestial realm. This spine-tingling saga showcases the chilling depths Marvel Comics can plunge into in pursuit of the scariest Spider-Man villains. And speaking of which, at number 7 is Sin Eater. Eater. In the Marvel Comics universe, not all villains are flashy, superpowered beings. Meet Stanley Carter, for instance, a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent turned NYPD officer who snapped after his partner's demise, who perished in the line of duty, and Stanley Carter became the chilling serial unaliver known as the Sin Eater, who vowed to take out those he felt were sinners. His victims included a police captain, a judge, and even a priest, with Spider-Man nearly crossing his own moral line in the process. Now, what sets Sin Eater apart is his lack of interest in being a traditional supervillain. He's a remorseless vigilante driven solely by a dark sense of justice, making him one of Spider-Man's most disturbing adversaries.
Number 6. Dormammu. When it comes to ghoulies that exist less in the physical world and more in other dimensions, Dormammu is one of the folks who really reigns supreme. Why is Dormammu one of the most horrifying villains Marvel has to offer? Probably because he's just so darn powerful. Also, we don't call him the Dread Dormammu, the Dread Lord Dormammu, for nothing. He rules the Dark Dimension, which he conquered, and he isn't afraid to mess you up in honestly really terrible ways. I feel like being killed by Dormammu or his forces would actually be a mercy, considering all the terrible ways I've seen him torment his foes, both in the comics and honestly, outside of them as well. Number 5. Cassandra Nova. Cassandra Nova just creeps me out, even just to look at her. Often the way she is drawn is what disturbs me the most, but at the same time, she is drawn in a way that makes sense when you consider just how terrifying she is from a power set standpoint and in regards to how twisted her mind is. I feel like we draw her like how she is on the inside. She's like really creepy on the outside, and it's representing what she got going inside, you know what I mean? Which is really creepy and really gross. Cassandra Nova doesn't often think twice when it comes to pulling off unspeakable acts of horror. She will turn you inside out if she feels she needs to, or simply just if she wants to. And honestly, she can do that. At least from a psionic standpoint, and maybe even from a physical standpoint too. There's a few things that have happened, not quite sure what happened with her, but I was creepy and I don't want it to happen to me, I'll tell you that much. Cassandra Nova is one of the most powerful telepaths and psionic characters we have in Marvel Comics, and she just so happens to be a villain, usually, who until recently didn't even possess a sense of empathy. So, this has led her to slaughter millions without even batting an eye. In fact, she's probably less likely to blink and more likely to stare intently while she does this, as she laughs maniacally afterward. Number 4. Galactus. Have you seen Galactus? I don't think I need to justify why he's so scary. So instead, I'm just gonna talk a bit about the time that he took on Dazzler as one of his heralds. This was also a pretty scary time for me as a reader, because during that whole issue, during that whole story, I was wondering if Dazzler would ever get to go back home to Earth to continue to pursue her career as a singer. Seriously, when Dazzler goes on these wacky adventures in the comics, I'm always left worrying about if she's missing singing gigs back home. Like, I'm like, is there a concert going on right now? Like, will she ever recover her career? No, but in all seriousness, Galactus is scary not just because he is gigantic, though honestly there is also that pretty terrifying, especially scary for those who have megalophobia, a fear of gigantic things. He's also scary because in many ways he is inevitable. Although I believe Galactus is still currently deceased in the comics, it has been implied and stated on multiple occasions in the past that his existence is necessary for the cosmos to be in balance and continue on forward, implying that even when he's gone, we have to deal with the fear of what might happen to the universe and even perhaps the multiverse in his absence, which is now. Number 3. Tarn the Uncaring. Just thinking about Tarn sends shivers down my spine. Tarn is or was one of the Iraqi mutants. He was kinda like the Arakko version of Krakoa's Mr. Sinister, except that Tarn is an Omega level mutant who also has magic based powers as well. Tarn's powers are mainly psionic in nature, granting him the ability to read minds while also causing immense pain to his target. Not only is he telepathic, but he's also an immensely powerful telekinetic as well. Like Mr. Sinister, he is obsessed with evolution and genes, and is capable of altering the genetic makeup of other mutants, even taking their powers away or simply malforming them to the point that they can no longer function. The Locust Vile are what Tarn calls his loyal servants, who see him basically as a god. These Iraqi mutants are Tarn's experiments. While most don't survive his experimentation process, the ones who do worship him as their god and join his Locust Vile. Tarn also has the ability to teleport too, so he could just like pop up beside you and then literally turn you into a pile of painful goo. Pretty scary stuff. Number 2. Null. Null is basically the biggest, baddest symbiote around. Yeah, you thought Venom was scary? You thought Carnage was scary? Well, I mean, you're right. Both of those symbiotic characters are pretty scary. But without Null, neither would even exist, so think about that. Null is the god of symbiotes and also wields a symbiotic army complete with symbiotic dragons as well. I mean, yeah. Number 1, the Many-Angled Ones, aka Marvel's version of the Elder Gods. Or at least one of their versions, I would say. What could be scarier in any reality, honestly? Yep, Marvel also has their own Elder Gods who have been known sometimes as the Many-Angled Ones. What do the Many-Angled Ones get up to? Well, when they invade the reality known as Earth 10011, they warp it into something horrifically twisted. After they have influenced and invaded this reality successfully, death is eliminated and life runs rampant and unchecked, with many prominent figures in this reality pledging themselves to the Many-Angled Ones. And if you think that eliminating death would be a good thing, just check out this universe. We'd come to know this reality as the Cancerverse. For a while, the Many-Angled Ones and the Cancerverse actually threatened the entire multiverse, attempting at first to invade Earth 616, which is our main comic book continuity. Fortunately, they did not succeed in their attempt, but if they had, that should be like a what if issue. What if they did that? Does that exist? If it exists, let me know what issue it is so I can look it up and read.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Erica Manson, aka Marionette. She made her comic book debut just 2 years ago in Doomsday Clock issue 1. Her and her father moved to the United States and opened up a puppet shop across the street from Maze Glass, which eventually led her to meet Marcos Maze, who would soon become her husband, but I'll get into that a little bit later. They started, of course, as best friends, while Marco's stepfather thought that she was a bad influence. Ooh, so Marco ended up saving Erica from some bullies, and then Erica's father committed suicide after corrupt police officers were extorting money out of him at his puppet shop. Now, of course, this already sounds like a villain origin story, but it gets worse. So Erica ended up getting payback on the policeman while, of course, becoming the alternate persona, Marionette, with her trusty lover sidekick, Mime, aka Marcos Maze, who I mentioned earlier. I love this duo, honestly. Like, the vibe reminds me of, like, from Baby Driver, where you have Buddy and Darling. A lot of love and violence, just a hot mix. And before we head over to number 9, guys, if you could just give this video a thumbs up and like this video, it goes a long way over here at the studio. You guys rock, thank you. Now back to some more villains. And number 9, the Underbroker, not to be confused with the Underminer from Incredibles. So Harlan Graves, aka the Underbroker, is a businessman and lawyer located in, of course, Gotham City, who runs a bank for criminals. The Underbroker, of course, wears a fancy suit and a mask. I mean, he looks ready to go to the club, and he also looks ready to crunch some numbers. Love the red and black combo. Slick. He's a broker for criminals, so he would help them store cash in hedge funds. And he's actually so good at his job that the Caped Crusader doesn't even know about his secret organization he calls the Underbrokerage. Great name. He actually helped Catwoman transfer Batman's money to her account, but it was later revealed that he was just getting the account for the Joker. Super smart, super evil, and super handsome. Gotta love it. He made his debut in Batman Volume 3, issue 92. So if you want to check him out for yourself, you know where to look. And number 8, Barbados, also referred to as the Bat God, not Rap God. And he resides in the Dark Multiverse. So, the World Forger, of course, was set to watch over the vast universes, and while some of them held up, there are just some worlds that were just naturally unstable. So, what next? Well, they send a dragon named Barbados to destroy it. That way the energy can then return to the Forge. Now, sometimes you like your job a little bit too much, and this was the case for the Bat God. See, he ended up killing his master and then had a real taste for destruction, thus corrupting the Forge of Worlds. So now, with Barbados not destroying these worlds and sending that energy back, these worlds ended up becoming part of the Dark Universe. His journey begins with Dark Days, the Casting, issue 1.
Number 7, Punchline. Also called Alexis K, she is the Joker's new right-hand woman, as Harley has a lot going on right now and the two aren't really on speaking terms. She was a student at Snyder College and encountered the Joker while on a field trip to a TV studio. Joker hijacked the studio and Alexis was forced at gunpoint to act as the newsreader, delivering Joker's message to the citizens of Gotham. After this encounter, she became obsessed, starting a podcast about the Joker and poisoning the people around her to try and get his attention. She eventually kills her college dean, proving herself to the Joker, who taught her how to create a modified form of his Joker venom. Link in the script there. She goes on to help Joker in his war against Batman, eventually having an epic showdown against Harley Quinn and Batman. She wields a couple of daggers and holds her own well against Catwoman and Harley. Number 6, Silver Banshee. First appearing in Action Comics number 595, Silver Banshee is a villain with sonic powers who frequently goes up against Superman. She was once insanely powerful, but has sort of been dumbed down a bit over the years. It's just how it goes with these supervillains sometimes. But in her youth, she was dragged into the Netherworld during a supernatural conflict as family stuff, and granted superpowers by a creature called the Crone. She is initially controlled by the powers like a curse, but later overcomes it with the help of Supergirl. They become fast friends and get to know each other pretty well. The two later hang out in a bar together, and it's totally lit. They're having a great time until her dad, Black Banshee, shows up. Luckily, the two of them are able to defeat Black Banshee together. Silver Banshee is known for her ability to learn language instantly, and more importantly, this crazy power to just like make people die by saying their name. It's sort of like the Black Canary's Canary Cry, except the Banshee version, and it instantly kills you. Number 5. Blackfire. Blackfire is the older sister of Starfire from the Teen Titans. She often appears as an adversary of the Titans and is extremely powerful, outmatching the already astounding Starfire in battle. She can absorb ultraviolet radiation and transform it into deadly bolts she calls Black Bolts, and can even change radiation into energy, giving her superhuman strength and endurance. She is especially powerful, capable of interstellar travel and flight in space. It's kind of the same thing. She appears in Red Hood and the Outlaws number 11, where she fights alongside her sister and takes down the Blight after they capture Roy Harper. It's an epic team up and a great reunion for the two sisters. Number 4. Mary, Queen of Blood. Mary Seward is the Queen of Blood, appearing in House of Mystery number 290 in 1981. She once had a lover named Andrew Bennett, a decorated nobleman who was bitten and turned into a vampire. Mary begged Andrew to bite her as well, hoping that the two could spend eternity together. However, Andrew resists the vampiric bloodlust while Mary embraces it and becomes a ruthless killer. She forms a cult called the Blood Red Moon, and Andrew hunts her across the centuries trying to stop her. She once turned an entire temple of monks into vampires, but they rather impressively resist the bloodlust through mindfulness and meditation. She has a crazy host of powerful abilities, including psychokinesis, transformation, regeneration, superhuman strength, not to mention immortality. As long as she has a steady supply of blood, she is extremely powerful, and I'm sure it's easy for her to get more. Number 3. Killer Frost. Killer Frost is just a classic deadly female villain, an icy-hearted femme fatale who will literally suck the life out of you in a heartless attack. There have been multiple iterations of Frost, always iconic and always super powerful, having once even sold her soul to become more powerful. She has been kidnapped and forced to work on the Suicide Squad, and once even worked alongside Batman. Caitlin Snow is the newest Frost, a scientist who is tricked by Hive and made to die in a staged accident, but she instead survives and gains her ice-based powers. She is not made of ice, but instead generates organic ice-like cells that make up her entire genetic makeup. She is a heat vampire, absorbing the body heat of others to kill them. Number 2. Enchantress. Also known as June Moon, Enchantress gained her powers from an immensely powerful being and almost immediately winds up battling against Supergirl. She later joins the Suicide Squad as Amanda Waller agrees to help her control her evil Enchantress side. She can manipulate energy, heal, and even teleport. She once took on Wonder Woman, Cyborg, and Superman all at once, and has defeated other villains as well. Her powers have gotten kind of erratic and unpredictable since June Moon and Enchantress became separated from one another, but she has still demonstrated some impressive raw power in her villainous career. She is capable of flight, necromancy, and possession, elemental control, and even resurrection, but only if the corpse is fresh. If it's not though, she can always use the necromancy. Number 1. Evil Supergirl. Lex Luthor had an evil scheme that basically caused all of this. He created a black kryptonite energy ray, which he used on Supergirl, hoping to corrupt her. Instead though, the ray generated a second dark version of Supergirl. This dark version had similar memories and experiences, but believed that she was sent to Earth to kill Superman. And as you can imagine, she's crazy powerful. She goes on a rampage using her Kryptonian powers, causing tons of damage, and even taking down Black Canary and the Flash, before finally facing off in an epic battle with Superman and Wonder Woman. Evil Supergirl is likely one of the most powerful villains ever, and it's actually Wonder Woman that brings her down in the end, catching both versions of Supergirl in her lasso and merging them together back into one.
Coming in at number 10, we have Eclipso, the alleged former Wrath of God. A supernatural agent of chaos with his face permanently in the shade of a constant eclipse, Eclipso claimed to be the one who carried out the biblical flood of Noah's Ark, and that he was replaced in his position as the physical embodiment of God's wrath by the Spectre, because Eclipso was just too violent and angry for the role. Older than almost every other being on Earth, Eclipso has fought many heroes over the years, and even though he no longer possesses the power of a full god, he is still an extremely dangerous magical being, and who knows what he'll do next to try and regain his power. Coming in at number 9, we have Starro the Conqueror, specifically the version seen in James Gunn's 2021 film, The Suicide Squad. Found by American astronauts during the early days of the Cold War, merely drifting through space, Starro was imprisoned and tortured for 30 years by the American government on the island Corto Maltese when it was discovered that Starro possessed incredible telepathic mind control powers that the government seek to learn how to weaponize. Although he eventually had to be taken down by the Suicide Squad when his anger at being imprisoned caused him to go on a rampage, Starro's story wound up being a tragic one, as his sad last words were, "I was happy, floating, staring at the stars." Rest in peace, Starro. Hopefully there's lots of stars to look at in big, mysterious kaiju heaven. Coming in at number 8, we have the Lord of Chaos, Dominus. In Enemy of Superman's, Dominus was originally a peaceful magic user on his alien homeworld, who soon became jealous when the woman he loved ascended past him and became the magical leader of their planet. Filled with envy and rage, Dominus was imprisoned in the Phantom Zone as punishment for attempting to betray his love, and over the course of his long imprisonment, Dominus soon learned to embrace the chaos of magic and managed to free himself through a gateway in Superman's Fortress of Solitude. With strength to rival the Man of Steel himself and magical abilities that can completely distort reality, Dominus is one of the most unpredictable and dangerous magic wielders in the entire DC universe.
Number 7, Superboy Prime. Just because Superman can't take Darkseid alone doesn't mean that another version of the character couldn't stand a fighting chance. Superboy Prime, or Superman Prime as he is often referred to now, might not have the physical strength, but it could be possible that he could manipulate reality to make Darkseid weaker, or even cause him to just not exist. How? With just a punch. There was a time in the comics where Superboy Prime was shown to be so strong that he punched reality, splintering it and in essence reshaping it. If Superboy Prime has the power to punch retcons into existence, what can't he do? Number 6, Volthoom. Volthoom is the very first Lantern who, after receiving the very first Lantern ring from the Guardians of the Universe, turned dark, losing control of all the emotions within himself. Or maybe he was a little dark even before that. He killed millions of people and enjoys sowing discord and creating chaos. At one point, he also almost succeeded in taking hold of the universe and reshaping it in his own image. It took the collective power of Parallax, Sinestro, Necron, and a Black Lantern, Hal Jordan, to stop him. He can warp reality, manipulate time, and has increased durability. He's taken on an army of Black Lanterns all by himself, and at one point was powerful enough to hold the universe in his hand. I'm pretty sure if there is anyone who could take on Darkseid solo, it would be Volthoom. Number 5, Starro the Conqueror. Starro is a frightening enemy. Not only is there the potential for Starro to simply take hold of Darkseid and use him as a pawn, which we have actually seen pictured in the Future State Justice League series in issue 1, but you can have a Starro that could be up to thousands of miles across. Their sizes greatly vary, meaning that you could have a Starro simply capable of crushing Darkseid if it wanted to. Though honestly, taking his mind hostage and using him as a weapon for its own purpose is a far more terrifying prospect. Not just for our heroes, but I imagine for Darkseid as well. Number 4, The Darkest Knight. I never thought I'd consider Batman Who Laughs to be such a powerful threat, but after he took the brain of final Bruce Wayne, who basically had the powers of Dr. Manhattan, he became one of the most powerful beings in the universe. True, he was defeated by Wonder Woman, but if we can imagine a scenario outside of Darkseid Dark Knight's death metal, where with his newly acquired power he squared off with Darkseid, it would be easy to see how he could win against that villain. With Dr. Manhattan's abilities, there would be almost no feat of power too great for him to accomplish. In his Darkest Night form, the Batman Who Laughs became invulnerable and immortal, which would also make it very hard for Darkseid to not only wound him, but defeat him as well. Number 3. Anti-Monitor. Many consider the Anti-Monitor to be one of DC's greatest threats. It usually comes down to either Anti-Monitor or Darkseid when you ask fans who is the most powerful and fearsome antagonist of the DC universe. The thing with Anti-Monitor is most of his stories have included threatening not just multiple worlds, but entire multiverses. So compared to Darkseid, he's generally on another scale. And not just in terms of threats and power, but also just in terms of actual size. Darkseid is typically shown as being an intimidating height, but only really in comparison to other superpowered beings and humans. He's like anywhere from a few feet taller to double their size. Anti-Monitor, on the other hand, is generally depicted as being hundreds of feet tall. So unless we are giving Darkseid a major boost to his size, Anti-Monitor could just squish him like a bug. Of course, we did give Darkseid a major boost to his size when the two fought, but even then Darkseid ended up dying. Of course, it wasn't Anti-Monitor who caused his apparent death, but it still happened while they were fighting, so hey, I'm counting it. Number 2. Perpetua. Perpetua is also likely a character who could take Darkseid, considering that she has destroyed entire alternate Earths before and even managed to break the Source Wall. Pretty impressive and terrifying stuff. Perpetua, for those who don't know, is an agent of the Source who went rogue. Initially, she was on a mission of creation, but instead decided to turn to the side of chaos and destruction, with a plan to remake the multiverse in her own image. Some might think that Perpetua isn't so scary or strong, considering she has only been shown to destroy a single universe at a time. But in reality, when we saw her wreaking havoc in death metal, she was not yet back to her full strength. If Perpetua was back at her max strength of power, there's no telling just how much destruction she could bring about within an instant. Number 1. Trigon. In the animated film Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, we saw just what Trigon was capable of in the fight against Darkseid. And I know what you're thinking, how is Trigon more powerful than Perpetua, Amanda? But I'm giving this one to him because of this fight. Raven accidentally lost control of Trigon and set him loose on Apocalypse. Trigon in the film at least was shown to be strong enough to match Darkseid in power, if not beat him. Initially, that's because Trigon possessed Superman, using him as a host to fight Darkseid. But afterwards, Raven and Constantine team up to give Trigon back his own body, realizing that he is the key to defeating Darkseid, giving them enough time to escape back to Earth and enact Cyborg's plan to destroy Apocalypse. When Trigon gets his body back, he poses a very real threat to Darkseid, to the point that at one point Darkseid attempts to basically run away, but Trigon does not let him. As Apocalypse is destroyed, so are both of the villains, as Trigon holds Darkseid back, preventing him from fleeing.
Coming in at number 10 today is Lord Mar-Vell. Mar-Vell of the Kree was Marvel Comics' original Captain Marvel, and he was also the first Marvel superhero to permanently pass away when he succumbed to cancer in 1982's The Death of Captain Marvel. The character has reappeared as visions or in flashbacks and obviously in alternate realities, but the one we will focus on today is Mar-Vell of the Cancerverse. It's just a really cool and creative idea. Basically, on his infamous deathbed, the many Angled Ones contact and corrupt the dying Mar-Vell, granting him new powers which he used to transmute the other heroes, and with Marvel as their lord, they took down the Avatar of Death itself, which in turn completely destroyed Death, allowing the many Angled Ones to invade their reality.
Number 9. Ultron. Ultron was created by writer Roy Thomas and artist John Buscema, and made his first appearance in Avengers issue number 54 back in 1968. He's an advanced AI with a highly intelligent and malevolent personality, initially created by Dr. Henry Pym, the original Ant-Man. As a peacekeeping robot, Ultron eventually gained sentience and became obsessed with the idea of eliminating humanity, viewing it as the root cause of conflict and suffering in the entire world. He possesses superhuman strength, an incredibly high level of intelligence, durability, and the ability to upgrade and improve himself, making him a very scary villain by my view of things. As an artificial intelligence, Ultron has the ability to control and manipulate advanced technology, and often create creates armies of robotic drones called Ultron Sentries to carry out his plans, with his primary goal being to replace humanity with an entire race of robotic beings he calls Ultronics. Now, unlike many villains who have, human motivations or emotions, Ultron's cold, calculating nature, devoid of human empathy or conscience, makes him particularly chilling. Once again, he views humans as inherently flawed and disposable. Outside of just the comics, the possibility of a real-life Ultron raises existential questions about the potential dangers of creating advanced AI and the consequences of unchecked technological progress, which is something that terrifies me on a regular basis. Overall, Ultron's combination of intelligence, ruthlessness, technological prowess, and his lack of human qualities contributes to his reputation as a genuinely scary and memorable villain in the Marvel Universe.
Number 8. The Void. Similar to Lord Marvel, the Void is essentially taking the strongest and brightest character and creating a villain that is a sick and twisted version of that. A large part of what makes the Sentry so much more interesting is that while he is essentially like a god-like superhero who inspired all the other heroes, he also has a dark persona called the Void. The Void went on a rampage that took the lives of around 1 million people and almost destroyed Manhattan itself, and so the Sentry made the decision, with other heroes like Reed Richards and Doctor Strange, to cause the entire world to forget about the Sentry himself. Now, in New Avengers from 2004 and 2005, the Sentry comes back to the world, and through a series of events, the Void also returns. Full rosters of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all went to take on the Void, and they couldn't do a damn thing. Only the Sentry himself could really subdue the Void, and it, in classic supervillain fashion, vowed to just come back. And it totally did. In this siege event, Norman Osborn decided to attack Asgard, and he used the Sentry to do this. The problem is, the Sentry ended up unleashing the Void, and it totally obliterated Asgard completely, taking out Loki in the process. This did actually branch off into a what-if story where the Void was never stopped and destroyed every superhero on Earth, and then went off into the universe to basically do the same thing everywhere else.
Number 7. Dracula. This might be my vampire-loving bias coming into play, but I think the way Dracula is portrayed in the Marvel comics is quite scary, and that's coming from someone that's usually more enamored with him than scared by him. Hey, to each their own. So Dracula is a prominent character in the comics, and he's portrayed as, the classic vampire figure. So the classy vampire made his first appearance in Tomb of Dracula in 1972, which was created by writer Marv Wolfman and artist Gene Colan. This comic series, along with many other Marvel horror titles of the era, contributed to the resurgence of interest in horror comics. Now, he's based on the classic Bram Stoker depiction of the centuries-old vampire, cursed with immortality and supernatural powers. Like many traditional vampires, Dracula possesses superhuman strength, speed, agility, the ability to hypnotize and control the minds of his victims, transform into a bat or other creatures, and has an aversion to, the usual sunlight, garlic, crosses. He can also regenerate from most injuries, except for those inflicted by wooden stakes, through the heart, or exposure to sunlight. Dracula is often portrayed as the lord and ruler of Earth's vampires, commanding a vast army of followers and seeking to expand his dominion over both the human and vampire worlds. Now, Dracula has clashed with numerous Marvel superheroes over the years, and these confrontations often involve battles against his little minions as well. If that isn't scary enough for you, Dracula's curse of immortality is deeply unsettling, since, he can't be killed by any conventional means. As a vampire, Dracula feeds on the life source of the living, and his ability to hypnotize and control the minds of his victims adds quite the psychological dimension to the fear he instills. Hey, loss of free will and autonomy is a terrifying concept. One notable encounter occurred in the storyline Avengers 185 and 86, published in 1979, when Dracula targets the Avengers after becoming obsessed with the Scarlet Witch. And I can't say I blame him for falling in love with her. Granted, his attempt to make her his bride leads to quite the confrontation.
At number 6 is the Evil Hulk from Age of X. In Age of X, the X-Men had found themselves entrenched in a never-ending battle against their extinction, defending their last mutant stronghold against the mutant-hating Avengers. This era reshaped the Avengers into a government-backed mutant hunting unit where Dr. Bruce Banner, involved in mutant experiments, inadvertently underwent a horrific transformation. The Hulk's tragic metamorphosis, triggered during a mutant sterilization experiment gone awry, resulted in a devastating loss of control. His uncontrollable rage led to the brutal demise of his colleagues and even his fiancée, fueling an intense animosity towards mutants for some reason. Unbeknownst to many, his role in the Avengers was a last-ditch strategy, if they failed, a plan that led to his demise when he attempted to unleash a chemical on Fortress X. This Hulk stands as a chilling reminder of the brutal force that, even in the face of adversity, cannot be easily subdued. At number 5 is Bullseye. Bullseye is a menacing figure in the Marvel Universe, embodying the epitome of relentless brutality. A mercenary with a chilling penchant for evil, his proficiency in wielding various projectiles elevates him to a league of his own. His lethal accuracy with any thrown weapon renders him a formidable adversary. Not just a master of hand-to-hand combat, Bullseye boasts combat skills that would rival even the most elite fighters in the Marvel Universe. Now, what sets Bullseye apart is his unwavering passion for combat, relishing in every moment as if it were his raison d'etre. His very essence thrives in the chaos of battle, a disturbingly eerie smile etched on his face throughout. Not even driven by profit, but the sheer enjoyment of his grisly craft, Bullseye's commitment to his malevolent inclinations is unwavering. His existence aligns with the philosophy that doing what one loves negates the notion of working, even if it involves the unthinkable, perhaps even eliminating people for free. At number 4 is the Void. The Void is the alter ego of Sentry, which stands as one of the most relentless villains in the Marvel Universe. As an embodiment of darkness and brutality, it mirrors Sentry's own inner turmoil. This duality makes the Void an adversary unlike any other. The idea of the Void was implanted in Sentry's mind, creating a cycle where defeating the Void becomes an endless battle. The Void's return is inevitable because it's rooted in Sentry's psyche, an integral part of his being. And despite temporary victories, the return of this villain symbolizes the enduring challenge of conquering one's inner demons. The ongoing struggle between Sentry and the Void is an age-old battle between light and darkness within oneself. At number 3 is Magneto. His actions throughout various storylines showcase his unwavering commitment to his cause, often through brutal and unforgiving methods. The iconic Fatal Attraction storyline demonstrated his sheer power as he forcibly removed the adamantium from Wolverine's skeleton, an act that showcased his capacity for extreme brutality. And throughout his history, Magneto's vengeful nature has led to devastating consequences. From attacking San Francisco with mutant unaliving sentinels to sinking Soviet submarines in response to governmental insolence. His actions highlight the extremities to which he's willing to go for his beliefs. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, an embodiment of his antagonistic approach, contradicts the very idea of peaceful coexistence Xavier aims for within the X-Men. And in instances like the House of M, his rash actions led to the tragic loss of countless lives, such as against his own son Pedro. One of the most chilling instances demonstrating his mercilessness was when he gruesomely used just a paperclip to inflict fatal injuries on a scientist who resisted his interrogation. At number 2 is Sabretooth. In the world of Marvel, Sabretooth stands as a relentless nemesis, to say the least. Vicious history with the X-Men is a testament to his brutal nature. Notably, his vendetta against Wolverine is particularly savage. Sabretooth's actions extend beyond direct assaults on Logan, often targeting those closest to him, inflicting intense emotional and physical pain. A chilling example is Sabretooth's twisted tradition of attacking Wolverine on his birthday, rooted in a tragic event where he unalived Logan's partner, Silver Fox. The psychological torment doesn't stop there either. He orchestrated events that led to Wolverine tragically having to end his own son's life. Manipulation and cruelty define Sabretooth's character, making him an adversary not just in physical prowess, but also in psychological warfare. There is literally no act too morally scummy for Sabretooth. And at number 1 is Venom, a character both feared and adored. He's evolved from a ruthless supervillain to an anti-hero in the Marvel Universe. First appearing in The Amazing Spider-Man number 299, Venom's introduction was nothing short of menacing. Not only did he terrify Mary Jane, leaving her traumatized, but he also engaged in a lethal encounter in Our Lady of Saints Church, breaking the sanctity of the place by eliminating a police officer. These horrific acts just set the tone for Venom's malevolence. The character's brutality continued with the likes of Black Cat, whom he physically and emotionally harmed, and not to mention his actual brain eating, a horrific event that was seen in Venom: The Hunger #1. Venom's dark history extended to Anne Wang, whose association with the symbiote ended tragically, and Lee Price, a host who willingly used the symbiote for brutal homicidal acts. The character exhibited a level of violence and evil surpassing that of many other villains, culminating in his involvement in planetary mass unaliving. The Venom's progression from villain to anti-hero is marked by a series of abhorrent deeds, showcasing a complex character torn between dark impulses and occasional acts of redemption.
Number 10, Count Vertigo. Now aptly named Werner Vertigo, he is a man who was born with an inner ear defect that affected his balance. So naturally he was implanted with the device that not only corrected that, but also gave him the ability to cause extreme vertigo in other people. That's right, his entire ability is disrupting his enemy's balance, and honestly, you might think that's not really anything to write home about, but trust me, it is a lot more useful than you might think. Now, Count Vertigo uses his ability to mess up the aim of even the best marksmen, to disrupt the guidance system of some of the most high-tech machinery, and even uses it to manipulate the emotions of people, causing them to flop between emotions like crazy. Now, there are also two other Count Vertigos that fought against Green Arrow, but they use drugs to cause the same effects in their victims, and we are going to ignore them because using drugs is not cool.
It's true, it's not cool.
It's really not.
Number 9, Calendar Man. Calendar Man to most people is just a guy who is obsessed with the date. But in reality, he is also one of the most accomplished villains. During his first appearance, he almost managed to defeat Batman, one of the greatest and smartest detectives in the world, straight out of the gate, by giving him an almost unsolvable problem. Calendar Man sent an anonymous letter promising to commit 5 crimes, one each day, each one corresponding to a particular season and theme, with the 5th day also being a clue as to the true identity of Calendar Man, with the 5th season. Batman failed to capture Calendar Man on the first 4 days, often arriving too late to the scene of the crime. And on the 5th day, it was only an ad for Calendar Man's side hustle as a magician, who was playing 5 days at the Bijou Theater in Gotham, that allowed Batman to connect the dots. Where would Batman be without ads from the local newspaper? Local newspapers, they're important.
They really are. You always gotta support local.
Yeah.
Number 8, Phobia. Quite possibly one of the most underrated villains in the DC universe, Angela Hawkins III is Phobia, a member of the Brotherhood of Evil and constant enemy of the new Teen Titans that is capable of bringing your deepest and darkest fears to the surface. She basically uses psychic abilities to access the fear center of your brain and creates incredibly lifelike illusions that incapacitate pretty much everyone except for a select few who have been shown to be immune. Funnily enough, she is actually not immune to her own powers because she has some deep, dark insecurities and phobias hidden away as well, behind that, tough exterior. And that was exploited by Raven in an attempt to convert her to the hero side of things. Obviously that didn't work though, because since then, she has joined the Injustice League as a new member.
Number 7. Lady Shiva. She's been known as a villain and a hero since her first debut in Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter issue 5. Now, Lady Shiva and the assassin David Kane did have a child named Cassandra Cain, who was the 4th Batgirl. She also had another child as well in another comic, which I'll explain a little later on in this list. So she made her first debut in Batman issue 567, called The Mark of Cain. When Lady Shiva had her, she was born with the intention to serve as a bodyguard for Ra's al Ghul. Her father, of course, trained her as a child, so she wasn't taught to speak though, that's the thing. He would instead use actions to communicate with young Cassandra. That, and they cut her off from the outside world, only exposing her to the things that she needs only when necessary. So not the most fun childhood, that's for sure. So what ended up happening is that part of the brain that registers speech and language processing was instead being used to read other people's body language, like super well. So this made her a great fighter. She could predict the moves that somebody was going to do before she did them. Number 6, Ursa. She was a Kryptonian military officer who was loyal to General Zod. But of course she was banished to the Phantom Zone with him, and then in there they conceived a child. That child's name was Lor-Zod. They conceived him in the Phantom Zone until he arrived by pod to Earth. So this young boy was lifting TV sets and cars like it was nothing. Everybody was soon looking his direction. It was obvious that he wasn't from around here. So the Department of Metahumans Affairs decided to take the boy to a secret place in Washington to do tests and all that jazz. But they didn't tell Superman, which is not a great idea. He broke Lor-Zod out and then convinced Lois to adopt the young boy, naming him Christopher Kent. And yes, he is also immune to kryptonite. Now, of course, he has similar powers to Superman, but the most unique ability Christopher Kent has is that of telekinesis. Number 5, Cheshire. Made her first comic book debut in New Titans Annual Issue 2. She's an assassin and a mercenary who uses potions. She's often gone head-to-head with the Titans, and sometimes she gets a little closer than what we would imagine. Turns out she fell in love with one of those Titans. She fell in love with Roy Harper, aka Arsenal. See, originally Roy went undercover for the government in a mission to try and turn her over, but they fell in love during this mission. Classic. So he knew there was no way he could turn her in, so he just left. He just called it off. So Jade didn't know his true identity until years later, but after their romance took off, their daughter Leon was welcomed to the world with Roy raising her. See, sometimes it ends up okay, sometimes it's weird, sometimes it's okay. This next one though is pretty weird. Number 4, Orca. This next one takes place in the Injustice Elseworld series, where Killer Croc and Orca are actually married. Yeah, it's nice when it starts with the two of them being together already. Like, no one has to go to jail, no one's getting broken out, no one's conceiving children in the Phantom Zone. It's It's nice, it's fun. It's weird, but it's fine, at least in terms of villains. Now, in Injustice 2, issue 42, Orca walks in, simply announces that she's pregnant, and then a nice spit take is the first response. And then Killer Croc stands up and he's like, well, I should probably go. And then everyone's like, I have so many questions, but if you ask questions, Killer Croc will not answer them. He'll instead put your head through a wall. So keep those thoughts to yourself, my friend. That child would be quite the unit. I mean, Orca mixed with Killer Croc, I would never want to bump into this family in any parking lot ever. That sounds like a nightmare. They're cute though, they're happy. Number 3, Lady Shiva. Again, this time we're talking about Lady Shiva from the Dark Multiverse. See, your partner this time around was none other than back-breaking Bane. And they had a son named Torn, and this happened right after Bane had actually broke the Batman. Now, cut to 30 years down the road, John Paul Valley is the new Batman, and poor young Torn had to watch his father get broken by the Bat this time around. So he trained with his mother in the League of Assassins, and then when he got a little bit older, it was time. They freed Bruce Wayne from capture in Gotham City and helped restore him to the mantle of Batman so they can get revenge on John Paul Valley. And as far as villain mothers go, this isn't too bad. I mean, anything that involves breaking Batman out to get revenge, hey, I'm on board, sign me up. Number 2, Maxima. Making her first appearance in Action Comics issue 645, Maxima is the oldest child of the royal family of Almerac. She came to Earth in search for a suitable mate, and then when she laid eyes on Superman, she knew he was the one. Just because they were compatible doesn't mean it's gonna happen. So Superman rejected this offer, so she went ahead and teamed up with Brainiac for a bit more before ultimately turning against him and joining the reformed Justice League. Now down the road, she again offered herself up to Superman because, you know, she's a better person now, doing good deeds. But again, Superman said nay. He was married to Lois, so it's just not in the cards. Sorry, Maxima, it's not gonna happen. But in Adventures of Superman Annual 3, we see a front cover that makes readers turn their heads. Well, after an untimely passing, Lois Lane sadly wasn't really in the picture anymore. Clark sadly felt responsible for not saving her, you know, typical hero stuff, typical guilt. So he left Earth, he couldn't bear it. He felt he didn't belong there anymore, truly. And while Superman was being attacked in space, Maxima came to their rescue. And Superman, well, he decided to stick around, not having anywhere else to go. He figured, why not? Now this escalated, they had their ups and downs, but in the comic it implies that the two eventually had kids. So the lesson here, folks, is if you get rejected, just keep trying, because maybe your dream man will just come swooping by you in space out of the blue. You never know. And finally, number 1, Harley Quinn. Of course, we have to mention the time Harley had children. Now, this is from the DCAU, where we don't necessarily see her children directly, but we meet Dee Dee, her 2 granddaughters who were twins, and they're just a load of fun. They were referred to as Dee Dee because it's cute and it sounds cool, but their names were actually Delilah and Daydream. So she had raised these twins in hopes of keeping them away from the life of crime, but they inherited the same fascination that Harley once had with the Joker. So this was easier said than done. They both ended up joining his gang when they were just teenagers. Honestly, anything that has to do with twins is just so fun to watch. Even if they're evil, I'm like, yeah, you guys look like you're coordinated, you're wearing the same thing, it's great. Well guys, there you have it. Which of these DC villains would you pick as your mother? If you had to pick one, let us know in the comments down below. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with.
Number 10, Clock King. Number 2, Clock King II? There have been a few Clock Kings over the years, and even in fact 2 Clock Kings IIs. There's been 2 of those, if you can believe that. The one we're talking about here, however, is the Clock King who is associated with the Terror Titans. This DC villain wasn't necessarily from the future, but did have precognitive abilities that linked him to the future. He could see close to 5 seconds in the future if you're rounding up. He would use his precognitive abilities to predict his enemies' moves and reactions, making him a fairly formidable villain, at least in comparison to some of the other Clock Kings who are really just guys obsessed with clocks and time. Number 9, New 52 Clock King. Yep, we never get to talk about Clock King, which means you know I'm gonna try and shine a spotlight on him here. Clock King's pretty cool. Despite him being kind of a weird villain originally, Clock King has actually had multiple versions, and that's just in the comics. He's also had live action and even animated versions of himself, despite being kind of an odd duck, at least to begin with. Sometimes referred to as Clock King III in terms of his overall appearances, but actually the first Clock King to have appeared in the New 52 continuity, this version is probably the most powerful version of the character. Well, it's kind of a toss-up between this version and the previous one that I just talked about, so You could decide for yourself who you think is more powerful, but I think this one's just a little bit more powerful. Initially, it appears as though he can actually manipulate time, sending people back through their own time stream. But later we learned that he actually employs hallucinogenic gas simply to make it seem like he's doing that. However, I'm not really super convinced on that. I'm sure hallucinations are involved in some way, but how do you make someone specifically hallucinate moments of their past? I guess perhaps through suggestion? Just seems a little suspicious. This version of Clock King appeared in the first issue of the 2016 Deathstroke series and also reappeared in the Deathstroke Rebirth comic. Basically, if you're a villain and you face off with Deathstroke, I feel like you're pretty cool, and I feel like you deserve a place on a powerful list. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about cool time-traveling future villains, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Magistrate. Initially, the Magistrate was thought of as a figurehead for some dark and sinister organization prior to Future State comics being released, and based on the synopses that we got for that event/comic line. However, once we finally got into the future state of Gotham and got the comics, we learned that Magistrate was actually more a paramilitary force which had taken hold over Gotham. And now in the current run of Batman, it's made to seem like the Magistrate was actually a program launched by Simon Saint to help Gotham fight against crime and masked vigilantes, good or bad alike. Either way, the Magistrate is definitely a frightening antagonist, especially in the sense that it's not one that you can directly hit, as it's not a physical character, but more of an idea or concept that needs to be dismantled.
Coming in at number 7, we have the Reverse Flash. A walking time paradox, the Reverse Flash hails from a 25th century where the Flash is remembered as one of the greatest heroes of all time. Becoming obsessed with Barry Allen, the Reverse Flash was eventually able to gain control of the negative Speed Force and made it his life's goal to replace and destroy Barry after realizing he was destined to be defeated by him. Capable of traveling through time, Reverse Flash would wind up being responsible for nearly every bad thing that ever happened in Barry's life, raising a whole lot of questions about cause and effect and all sorts of timey-wimey weirdness, but mainly going to show that he's a dangerous and unpredictable villain. Coming in at number 6, we have the Court of Owls. Introduced in one of my personal favorite Batman arcs, the Court of Owls is an ancient conspiracy that has controlled Gotham City from the shadows for hundreds of years. Originally believed to just be a myth by Batman, given that he had investigated their existence as a kid after the murder of his parents, the court eventually revealed themselves when Bruce Wayne committed to super modernizing Gotham City. With multiple assassins that are seemingly immortal in their employ, and even some members of the court itself appearing to be human-owl hybrids, there's still a lot we don't know about the Court of Owls, and I for one can't wait to find out what we'll learn next. Coming in at number 5, we have Vandal Savage. Remember how I mentioned Eclipso is one of the oldest beings on Earth in the DC universe? Well, Vandal Savage is also in the running, having lived through much of human history as an immortal warrior and conqueror. Seemingly unable to age and with incredible healing abilities in most depictions of the character, Vandal supposedly gained his incredible powers from the radiation of a comet that may have originally been connected to Superman's homeworld of Krypton. Regardless of how he gained his abilities, however, Savage has been a persistent enemy to the Justice League for literally thousands of years, always scheming for a new way to gain more power. Coming in at number 4, we have the Emperor of Shadow, aka another evil Bruce Wayne from the Dark Multiverse. In a very recent one-off issue entitled Batman/Superman Authority Special, Batman discovers a reality from the Dark Multiverse where Ra's al Ghul's plan to dominate humanity has come to pass, and the League of Shadows has become an Empire of Shadows, controlling the entire world. To make matters worse, the leader of this empire is a Bruce Wayne who gave in to Ra's al Ghul's teachings and embraced his position as the world's new emperor. While Batman and Superman were eventually able to destroy the link between this world and the regular DC universe in order to prevent an invasion, this twisted version of Bruce Wayne is still out there, likely biding his time until the next opportunity arises for the Dark Multiverse to attack the regular multiverse once more. Coming in at number 3, we have Duella Dent. Now, given her last name, you'd assume that Duella was Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face's daughter. And that was her original backstory, with her being given the name Duella because Two-Face was disappointed that he didn't have twins. However, Duella's origins are actually a lot more mysterious, as in subsequent appearances, she's claimed to be the daughter of the Joker, the Penguin, Catwoman, Scarecrow, Riddler, and even Doomsday. Given the extreme unlikelihood that Duella could somehow be all of these villains' daughters, this crazy killer's origins may still be a mystery, but definitely don't make her any less dangerous. Coming in at number 2, we have to go with Batman's iconic nemesis, the Joker. When you're making a list about mysterious villains, the Clown Prince of Crime just has to be on there, because in a way, even more extreme than Duella, we still don't know what this guy's really all about. There have been attempts over the years to give the Joker some sort of backstory, like the Red Hood incident, or when the DC Universe briefly had 3 entirely separate Jokers, but these stories always seem to land on deciding that the Joker's true origin is ambiguous at best. But in all honesty, giving 100% certain backstory to the Joker would be betraying much of his character, and leaving a bit of ambiguity, well, that's probably for the best. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Perpetua, the dark goddess of the multiverse. The DC multiverse has faced many threats over the course of its existence, with the highest stakes being reserved for events labeled as a crisis. But beyond the scope of even the Crisis on Infinite Earths is Perpetua, the mother of the Anti-Monitor, and a being that, until recently, was locked behind the Source Wall at the very edge of the DC universe. The creator of every story we've ever been told throughout all of DC Comics, Perpetua altered and manipulated the multiverse for her own purposes and to thwart the mysterious hands that seem to be even beyond her own power level. We still don't know everything there is to know about Perpetua, even if she was eventually able to have her plans stopped, and the sheer scale of her ambitions makes her the most mysterious DC villain of all.
Number 10, Ares. Ares was the one to actually wound Darkseid in the DCEU in Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League. Of course, this was back before Darkseid was calling himself Darkseid, back when he was Uaxis, and back when he was less powerful. But he was still a version of Darkseid, albeit a younger one, and Ares still beat him fair and square in a one-on-one combat. In fact, he beat him so badly that he was forced to retreat, and eventually his armies fell and the whole invasion was forced to retreat as well as a result of his defeat. Now, it is important to note that in our flashback to this moment, we also see that Darkseid was likely weakened not just by Ares, but by the armies of Earth prior to Ares' attack on him. So yeah, it was kinda one-on-one, but before that it was like a bunch of people on one. However, Ares is also the god of war, so when going toe-to-toe with him, facing armies as well is just kinda the norm. Number 9, Solaris. Solaris might stand a chance against Darkseid considering he's literally just a sentient sun. Typically his beef is with Superman, but if there were a reason for Solaris to take on Darkseid, I'm sure he'd stand a pretty good chance of beating him in a fight. It would be his intense radiation and laser beams versus Darkseid's Omega beams. Considering that Solaris is also an adaptable villain who can scan and process an attack and then use that information to create a powerful defense against it, this also means there are very few attacks that happen to be powerful enough to destroy him, unless you can like destroy him outright with that first attack. This is also why Solaris makes such a great recurring villain. Maybe Darkseid would beat him even the first time around, but Solaris would likely still survive because he's just so resilient and indestructible, and he'd likely return years later for a rematch. And before we move on to this next spot, if you are enjoying this list and you want more lists like it, be sure to show us some love by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Necron. Necron is the embodiment of death, an extra-dimensional being who often seeks to conquer the universe. He has attempted to do so a few times and failed, but during Blackest Night we saw him come fairly close to accomplishing his goal. If not for the presence of the White Lantern, he would have likely succeeded. During that event, we also saw Necron's power level boosted, turning him into a massive threat to not just Earth, but all of the universe. The other thing is that Necron is a constant, and as such can't really be permanently killed at any point. As long as death exists, he technically must exist as well. Even without the boost to his power levels that we saw in Blackest Night, Necron has still managed to take hits from the Anti-Monitor without so much as flinching. That's just how untouchable he is. Number 7. Savior. Savior is the future version of Tim Drake from the Titans Tomorrow alternate reality. Here, Tim Drake ended up taking on the mantle of Batman, but would eventually become known as the vigilante Savior. You might be thinking, but Tim Drake is a good guy. He's not evil. What are you talking about? And normally, you'd be right. But in this reality, Tim doesn't end up quite as heroic as the main counterpart had hoped he'd grow up to be. This version of Tim comes to us from a much darker timeline, one where everything got so bad that he and his fellow Titans, known as actually one of the two different opposing Titans teams in the future, ended up adopting a zero-tolerance policy for criminals. Eventually, this future version of Tim Drake even ends up wielding the gun used to kill Martha and Thomas Wayne in his fight for vengeance. Basically, he becomes OG Batman, but even darker. Number 6. Brother Eye. Brother Eye isn't necessarily a villain who exists exclusively in the future, but in Future's End, it is an entity that takes over the world, so I feel like we can count it for that fact. Also, Brother Eye is pretty future-y in terms of its concept. Brother Eye was initially created to be a hero, protecting the world from any threat. In Future's End, the artificial intelligence was created by Batman and Mr. Terrific, but its prime directive ended up kinda corrupting it. Brother Eye came to realize that humanity's greatest threat was actually humanity itself, and sought for complete control over the people of planet Earth, seeing this as the only way to protect them from themselves. It's that age-old AI warning story. Be careful what you wish for, or one day AI technology may just rise up and realize how awful you really are and either hold you prisoner for the rest of your life or just kill you. You know the one. Number 5. Zoom. Zoom might not be a villain who is from the future, but he is a villain who could potentially access it and who has gone back to the past, therefore being from the future at that point, to mess about with Wally West's life. Hunter Zolomon was once a good friend and colleague of Wally West's. He had a rough life, and after Wally refused to help him by going back in time and reversing a severe injury of Hunter's, he'd lost the ability to walk and was basically now confined to a wheelchair. Hunter decided he needed to step up and help Wally become the hero he was meant to be. Hunter actually has twisted but ultimately altruistic intentions at heart. His goal is to make Wally's life miserable and give him a more tragic backstory so that Wally would end up being a better hero in the future, more inclined to help other people with their problems because he would understand them better. Of course, the reason the Flash did not decide to help Hunter is because he knew how dangerous messing with the time stream was. He was like, we can't just do that. But to Hunter, who had suffered throughout his life, he didn't see that as the real reason behind Wally wouldn't help. He was like, no, that's not what it is, it's just you don't get it. Let me go make your life miserable and then you'll get it. You're welcome. Number 4. Savitar from the Arrowverse. This villain is actually a time remnant of Barry Allen and is a combination of the comic book versions of Savitar and Future Flash. Savitar is what ends up happening to Barry Allen if he decides to go down a much darker path. Being spurned by his friends, Team Flash, he instead sets out to become the very thing that ruined his own life. He becomes obsessed with power and aims to become a god. Savitar looks super futuristic and could be considered to be even more powerful than the main continuity version of Barry Allen from CW's The Flash. Savitar also possesses the artifact known as the Philosopher's Stone, made out of pure Speed Force energy. The Philosopher's Stone grants Savitar additional powers and rule over alterations made to reality. With it, he additionally becomes a powerful telepath. Number 3. Monarch. Monarch was actually revealed to be Hawk of Hawk and Dove, aka Hank Hall. But before we knew that, we simply knew Monarch as a tyrant ruling in a futuristic post-apocalyptic world. It turned out the death of Dove was what had prompted him to turn villain. Though, surprise surprise, Hank would later learn it was him himself from the future as Monarch who was responsible for killing Dove in the past. Legasp. Hawk would eventually go on to take up another villainous mantle, becoming known as Extant. As Extant, or Extant, Hank would team up with former Green Lantern Hal Jordan, now known as Parallax, during the events of Zero Hour. So yeah, pretty mega bad. Hal and Hank together plan to manipulate time in order to alter reality, making it as they wanted it to be. You know, if you're doing that, you're probably in the wrong. Number 2. Reverse Flash. One of the most powerful villains out there when it comes to villains from the future is Reverse Flash, aka Eobard Thawne. This villain has found a special kind of way to torment his arch nemesis Barry Allen, and even hurt him so much that Barry at one point killed him out of fear of what he would do to those that he loved. That's how much Reverse Flash had messed him up. We'd also learn later on that Eobard was responsible for one of the most tragic and pivotal moments in Barry's life, the death of his mom, Nora Allen. Many people for years believed it was Barry's father who had committed the crime, causing even more grief for young Barry and his family throughout his life. Number 1. Time Trapper. He's a time trap. Or she. depending on which story you're reading in regards to this character's true identity. Multiple true identities over here. Time Trapper has been implied to be a few different people when it comes to their true identity. One of the more notable folks who has been the implied true identity of the villain is Superboy Prime. If that was true, or I guess when that was true perhaps I should say, then that would make Time Trapper pretty crazy powerful, both strength-wise and of course power-wise as well. The Time Trapper throughout the years has been shown to have crazy control over time. They can block time travel, manipulate someone else's time stream, aging them prematurely for example, and can even take entire planets out of time, slicing pieces of that time off to capture them for their own use. It's been theorized by Brainiac 5 that what Time Trapper really may be is a sentient alternate timeline, forever in a constant battle or struggle with the main one.
At number 10 is Thanos. In the realm of Marvel villains, Thanos stands as the epitome of ruthless power. Unlike many intergalactic adversaries, what sets Thanos apart isn't just his immense strength, but the brutal lengths he'll go to accomplish his goals. Comparisons to Darkseid or Galactus don't even encapsulate this unique malevolence. Thanos isn't merely a conqueror. He's a sadistic force, destroying entire civilizations without flinching. His atrocities range from wiping out innocent lives across galaxies to unleashing nuclear devastation on his own homeworld Titan. His cruelty extends even to his own family, eliminating his parents, inflicting excruciating torment on Gamora and Nebula, his children, and callously unaliving countless other offspring. The Mad Titan's unyielding, merciless nature is what cements his position among the most brutal Marvel villains. The sheer magnitude of suffering he inflicts goes beyond mere conquest. It embodies a dark, unrelenting tyranny that renders him a force to be feared and impossible to stop. At number 9 is Carnage. In the realm of Marvel villains, some are driven by attention, necessity, or the sheer enjoyment of taking lives. Enter Cletus Cassidy, the genesis of the maniacal Carnage. The union of these two characters were born in prison, alarmingly showing the signs of cruelty. See, Cletus had pushed his grandmother down a staircase, attempting to electrocute his mother, and horrifically unalived his mother's dog, and that was just the beginning. Upon bonding with the symbiote in prison, turning into Carnage, Cassidy's malevolence, he became a frightful adversary for Spider-Man. Carnage embodies the true essence of a remorseful-less villain, capable of unthinkable acts without a second thought. His disregard for life towards literally anyone who crosses his path makes him an unnerving threat. This character's unbridled brutality and unpredictability sets him apart, making him a nightmare not just for Spidey, but anyone unfortunate to face him. If you're enjoying this video so far, you could support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate it if you did. At number 8 is Kang the Conqueror, a formidable force in Marvel's villainous realm. He embodies the essence of unyielding power and strategic brilliance. This figure, hailing from a distant future, stands as a testament to relentless domination. His insatiable thirst for conquest and war has shaped his identity. Clad in battle-ready armor, Kang doesn't merely orchestrate conflicts, he actively engages in the fray, demonstrating his prowess as a skilled combatant. He targets the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, not merely for conquest, but to prove his superiority. His elaborate schemes serve as a testament to his cunning intellect, yet at his core, Kang relishes combat. He's not merely about outsmarting his adversaries, he craves the raw thrill of testing his strength against the best. Kang's relentless pursuit of victory and the unyielding desire to assert his dominance make him an uncontainable force, a figure whose brutal prowess remains an unrelenting threat to all who oppose him. At number 7 is Green Goblin. Brutal Marvel villains like the Green Goblin stand out for their relentless schemes and emotional impact on superheroes, and Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin showcased an unmatched level of villainy by orchestrating Gwen Stacy's tragic demise, creating an event that scarred Spider-Man emotionally. This act solidified the Green Goblin as Spider-Man's most formidable adversary, inflicting profound psychological torment on the Wallcrawler. His manipulation from the Clone Saga to causing Peter Parker to be the unwitting catalyst in Gwen Stacy's fall emphasizes the depth of the Green Goblin's cruelty. Notably, even when compared to other antagonists like Dr. Octopus, it's the emotional toll that the Green Goblin inflicts that makes him stand out. The intricacies of the emotional trauma inflicted upon Peter Parker by the Green Goblin's actions illustrate the unparalleled impact of this brutal Marvel villain.
Number 6, Chthon. Doctor Strange is one of the few who is strong enough to act actually fight against Chthon. For those who are not familiar, Chthon is often attached to Scarlet Witch in Marvel Comics and is a demonic elder god, one of the oldest entities in the Marvel Universe. He is the one who is often believed to have granted Scarlet Witch her chaos magic abilities and has been known from time to time to possess Wanda as such, using her as his host. Doctor Strange is an immensely powerful magic user and is actually one of the few who can resist Chthon's influence and avoid becoming Chthon's mindless puppet. Strange has fought against Chthon many times, including when Scarlet Witch was possessed by Chthon during Secret Empire, with Strange being the one to actually free Wanda from Chthon's influence. Number 5. Nightmare. Nightmare is one of Doctor Strange's first ever villains. In fact, the first ever Doctor Strange villain in terms of comic book appearances. Nightmare made his first appearance alongside Doctor Strange, who also made his debut appearance in issue 110 of Strange Tales, released back in April of 1963. What makes Nightmare a villain to be feared? He plagues his victims using nightmares, reveling and finding power in their fear. Nightmare has been known in the comics for palling around in the past with the equally, if not more terrifying, baddie, Shuma Gorath. Nightmare is also in essence immortal. As long as people dream, he will continue to exist. He is the ruler of the Nightmare Dimension, one of the splinter realms of the Dream Dimension, and is actually considered to be the most powerful of the Splinter Realms rulers. Number 4. Shuma Gorath. Shuma Gorath is one of the Great Old Ones, and many angled ones, basically a Marvel version of an Elder God. Like Dormammu, he is also known to be one of the Lords of Chaos, although it's been kinda unclear throughout the comic lore as to whether there truly are multiple of those, or just one Lord of Chaos, who kinda like continues to be renamed throughout history. The many angled ones are known for being one of the oldest kinds of entities in the Marvel Universe. Shuma Gorath has returned to Earth many times and set up as a god there, being worshipped even on Earth before the sinking of Atlantis, where he demanded blood sacrifices. That's how you know he's evil and he's scary. Number 3. Umar. Umar is the sister of Dormammu. She is known as a powerful sorceress and villain who sometimes works alongside her brother when she's not busy devising her own devious plots, which sometimes involve basically getting back at her brother for something. While many people think of Dormammu as being the more terrifying of the two of these beings, Umar was actually also very active in helping to conquer the Dark Dimension. In fact, she may have even ended up the ruler of the Dark Dimension in Dormammu's place if she hadn't been exhausted due to dealing with the mindless ones. Umar is just as terrifying, if not at times I would say more so, than her brother. Number 2. Death. Death has to be one of the most frightening villains that Doctor Strange has fought against. Although sometimes Death isn't really a villain and is more like a neutral being. But I do also mean literally fought against, if you're wondering. I don't just mean like, oh, when Doctor Strange had to face Death. No, I mean literally fought. When most people think Death in regards to the Marvel Universe, they think of Mistress Death, the pretty woman that embodies the concept whom Thanos is in love with and whom in the comics he destroyed half of all life in the cosmos in an attempt to impress. However, Death can take many different forms, and in Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme issue number 55, Death is a creepy looking skeleton instead, who comes to claim Strange, threatening to take Strange back to its realm after claiming Strange's life. Here, Death torments Strange, trying to like sort of basically get him to lose his willpower here and cave in, give up, as the issue's main antagonist by making him relive the loss of his family, with him re-experiencing the loss of his sister, his brother, and his parents. Yeah, if you didn't know, Strange has siblings, he's lost them, and he's lost a lot of people. Like, Strange actually has a really tragic life. We should do a like top 10 worst things that have happened to Doctor Strange if we haven't already. Number 1. Mephisto. Mephisto is often thought of as the devil of Marvel. He rules over his own hellish dimension and is known for making lots of contracts with heroes that usually result in them being very unhappy in the end, despite getting what they wanted, much like the devil in various tales and lore. He's not someone you wanna make a bargain with, as typically there are conditions, which means that Mephisto often comes out on top in the end, even though, you know, he gave you what you wanted. Mephisto is both demonic and magical in terms of his origin and classification in Marvel's various realms of categories for characters. And if he plays his cards right, he can even use his powers to warp the reality of the universe, which we've actually seen him successfully do a few different times. Unlike most other characters in Marvel Comics, Mephisto is one of the rare few who have actually had success with making his changes to reality permanent. Mephisto is also a formidable foe in one-on-one combat, being that he is also super strong, durable, fast, fast and virtually immortal. Trust me, you wouldn't want to dance with this devil in the pale moonlight.
In at 10, Thanos. While usually portrayed as an evil, bent villain, many stories have depicted Thanos as having just a twisted moral compass and thinking that he's justified in whatever he's doing. The character's perhaps best known role came in the 1991 storyline of the Infinity Gauntlet, which was the culmination of several previous story arcs, like in the MCU, just in the comics, because you know they came first, which saw him successfully assembling the 6 Infinity Gems into a single gauntlet and then using them to kill half the universe's population, including many of its heroes, in an effort to earn the affection of Mistress Death, the living embodiment of death in the Marvel Universe. Yeah, that's right. Thanos wiped out half the universe in the comics to bone death. Although these events were later undone, it still just proves that never underestimate the power of horny.
Number 9, Uranos. Uranos is one of the coolest new villains we've gotten over at Marvel Comics. Sure, he isn't new in the sense of him being someone who just came out this year. He resurfaced back in 2021, rising to prominence in Kieran Gillen and Asad Rabish's Eternals comic book series, which was honestly short-lived. It was so good. But Uranos actually first appeared in a much smaller capacity back in the B story of a What If issue. What If issue number 24 from 1980 is considered his first appearance, despite it being a What If issue. He is obsessed often with destroying and eradicating all life, believing in contrast to most Eternals that the Celestials would be best served by the Eternals if both the humans and the deviants of Earth were destroyed.
In at 8, Galactus. Galactus is the sole survivor of the 6th incarnation of the multiverse. Originally, Galactus was a humanoid named Galen, born to the previous incarnation of Earth 616 on the planet of Ta, a paradise-like world whose civilization is said to have been the most advanced of any known universe at the time. However, the 6th Infinity and all its universes were in their final stages of collapse due to the multiversal renewal cycle, being consumed by the abstract entity known as the Black Winter. When the cosmos was going to meet its natural end, Galen was then approached by the embodiment of the 6th Infinity, the sentience of the multiverse. Basically, he was approached by Kevin Feige, who merged its essence with the mortal of Galen and creating the new multiverse, but also creating Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds. Yeah, I mean, the dude survived the universe, the multiverse resetting, so if that's not gonna stop him, I don't know, maybe Squirrel Girl will, by talking him down. Can't believe that that's a thing, maybe he shouldn't be on this list. But anyways, he possesses immeasurable power, like the power cosmic, and is just one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, having near limitless godlike power, and being considered an omnipotent entity. Dude's just mega OP if he hasn't eaten enough worlds, kinda like me.
Number 7, Hela. Hela is literally the goddess of death. How are you gonna stop that? She might not be the only one, but hey, that doesn't really matter. Either way, she has a sway over life, and that oftentimes cannot be beat. Even when Hela herself seemingly was destroyed, she actually returned, and for a while she was also teaming up with Thanos, which is an insane power couple that I don't think the world was ready for. I would still be interested to see what could happen with these two if they were truly both at the top of their game while being fully united on the villainy front.
At number 6 is the Lizard. Enter Dr. Curt Connors, a brilliant army surgeon who paid a steep price for his dedication to saving lives. After losing his arm in the crucible of battle, Connors embarked on a desperate quest to regrow his missing limb. And his solution? A serum rooted in the DNA of reptiles, a decision that would forever change his destiny. The consequences were chilling. The serum transformed Connors into the grotesque Lizard, a hulking reptilian menace devoid of self-control. With his psyche imprisoned, Dr. Connors became a nightmarish force of nature, leaving destruction in his wake. Though Spider-Man made an antidote to quell his reptilian rampage, the specter of the Lizard continues to haunt Dr. Connors, persisting as one of Spider-Man's most poignant and terrifying foes. At number 5 is Vermin. Edward Whalen, a genius geneticist who endured a harrowing upbringing under the cruel hand of his father, but ultimately Edward's brilliance would serve as the catalyst for his descent into the abyss of villainy. It was a sinister alliance with Baron Zemo and Primus that sealed his gruesome fate. Subjected to a diabolical experiment, Edward emerged as the grotesque Vermin, a rat-like abomination with the insatiable appetite for human flesh. Now, Vermin lurks in the murky depths of Manhattan sewers, a denizen of the city's darkest underbelly. His once brilliant mind has been cruelly eroded, unable to even remember the life he once had. At number 4 is the Swarm. In the web of Marvel's Rogues Gallery, there exists a truly spine-tingling villain born from the annals of macabre imagination. Fritz von Meyer, an evil scientist with sinister ambitions, sought refuge in the depths of South America following the tumultuous end of World War II, and we can all guess which side he was on. His post-war existence, however, took a bizarre twist when he donned the mantle of a humble beekeeper, but fate had a malevolent design in store for Fritz. Beneath the tropical canopy, he stumbled upon a colony of bees, oddly mutated by some sinister force. In a grisly turn of events, Fritz's quest to subdue the colony led to his untimely demise as he was devoured alive by the very creatures he sought to control. All that remained in the end were his skeletal remains, yet his tale doesn't end there. In a truly nightmarish turn, the bees actually absorbed Fritz's consciousness, merging his with the swarming hive mind of their own, and the result was an abomination known as Swarm, a being composed of thousands of bees acting in macabre unison, each dancing to the nightmarish symphony of Fritz's malevolent will. At number 3, the Thousand. In the comics, few Spider-Man villains are as unsettling as Carl King, who actually started off as one of Peter's high school bullies alongside Flash. Now, he was one of the few who actually witnessed Peter Parker's spider bite, and then was the only one who witnessed Peter's newfound powers thereafter, and so he sought similar powers and actually went on to eat the radioactive spider that bit Peter in the first place. Kind of a weird way of doing it, and so instead of acquiring new abilities, he transformed into the Thousand, a nightmarish collective of cyclically linked spiders. These spiders infiltrate and control victims by consuming them from the inside. Carl's mother was the first victim, but many followed thereafter. The Thousand is a chilling reminder that in the Spider-Man universe, true terror often arises from unexpected sources, making them the most spine-tingling foes in the Web-Slingers Rogues Gallery. At number 2 is Carnage, also known as Cletus Cassidy, a name that chills the spine, because he's a man whose descent into darkness was inevitable. Born without superpowers, he wielded the horrific potential within his twisted soul. See, it all began when he was just a child, committing his first heinous act by sending his grandmother tumbling down a staircase. Just a glimpse into the malevolence that lay dormant beneath this character's psyche. The St. Estes Home for Boys, an ill-fated refuge, failed to contain his rage. The disciplinarian administration met their grim end at his hands, and a poor girl met her doom beneath the wheels of a bus, and thereafter he left the orphanage reduced to smoldering ruins. Cassidy's score count probably spiraled into the dozens by this point, but his malevolence met its match when he found himself behind the bars of Rikers Island, sharing a cell with none other than Eddie Brock. Venom's chaotic escape left an indelible mark as a fragment of the symbiote left behind by Venom had merged with Cassidy, birthing none other than the monstrous Carnage. From then on, the nightmare had only begun, unleashing a new terror upon an unsuspecting world. And at number 1 is Green Goblin. In the annals of Marvel Comics, few villains send shivers down the spine quite like Norman Osborn, unwitting creator of the maniacal Green Goblin. A quest for strength and intellect led to a catastrophic incident, granting Osborn great power but also shattering his sanity. As the Green Goblin, Osborn became not just Spider-Man's nemesis, but a threat to the entire Marvel universe. His reign of terror left a grim trail of casualties, none more tragic than the unaliving of Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker's main love interest, which was a cold-hearted act just to torment Spider-Man. The Green Goblin's unpredictability, cunning, and ruthlessness make him one of Marvel's most enduring and fearsome foes, a chilling reminder of the darkness lurking in Spider-Man's world.
Number 10, Amanda Waller. She doesn't even have superpowers, but she is a power all on her own. Nicknamed the Wall, she is a government official who will do anything in the name of national security. I'm talking breaking the rules, killing people, even killing innocent people. She is the commander of Task Force X, aka Suicide Squad, a supervillain team that performs special operations under her command. She has a brilliant tactical mind and is ruthless and disciplined, bending supervillains to her will to get her work done, but she's not afraid to get her hands dirty. She once even uncovered Batman's secret identity. She might not be the deadliest DC villain by a pretty wide margin, but there are a whole host of DC villains that would say she's plenty deadly. It's this ability to get superpowered villains to do her dirty work that earns her this spot on our list. Number 9, Catwoman. Coming straight from the heart of Gotham City, Selina Kyle has had a varied origin, but she always ends up becoming Catwoman. In more recent years, she shows up more as a helper to Batman than as an enemy, but she is one of Batman's original villains, and for good reason. She is in peak physical condition and a nimble acrobat as well as master thief, sometimes even using literal cats to help her in her schemes. She might not have super strength or energy manipulation, but she is still a deadly foe, a skilled martial artist, stealth expert, and has considerable skill with weapons, including firearms and swords. Number 8, Cheetah. A much more intimidating cat, Cheetah has had a bit of a legacy, and there are a few different versions of the character. The most recent iteration of Cheetah is Barbara Minerva, who just recently appeared in DC's Wonder Woman 1984. A skilled archaeologist and linguist, she has a keen interest in the lost culture of the Amazons, and she actually helped Wonder Woman learn English when she first came to the United States. Dr. Minerva has made a pact with a god, transforming her into the cheetah with superhuman speed and all the deadly attributes of a feline. She battles with the inner turmoil of resisting her animalistic rage and predatory fury, and was once friends with Wonder Woman, at least in her human form. She was once busted out of jail by the crime syndicate and recruited onto their team. After a while, she led her own team known as the Menagerie, who terrorized New York from their hideout in Central Park.
Number 7, Perpetua. Perpetua is an old evil, but one that we didn't know of in the comics until 2018 when she was first introduced in Justice League Volume 4, Issue 8. Perpetua quickly became known as one of the greatest evils the universe, or multiverse really, had ever known. She was the creator basically of all things, and the mother to the Anti-Monitor, World Forger, and Over-Monitor. Billions of years ago, she was betrayed by her own children and trapped in the Source Wall, along with her devastating and deadly creatures, the Apex Predators, a vicious combination of Martians and humans. Yeah, she really old. Perpetua was the one ultimately responsible for the crisis in the DC universe, as it was her whisperings from within the Source Wall that brought them about. The energy allowed her prison to weaken, cracking a little more each time there was a crisis, which was how Perpetua planned to escape. She was eventually freed when the Source Wall broke as a result of Barbatos and the Batman Who Laughs actions, allowing her to once more wreak havoc on the world and earn back her power so she might rebuild the universe again in her own horrifying image.
Number 6, The Kindred. Making its first appearance in the Multiversity Guidebook number 1, the Kindred is this cosmic force that appeared after the Rebirth event. Created by Grant Morrison, the Kindred is a 4-part entity, and they each represent DC lore, so those 4 being the Speed Force, Magic, Cosmic Power, and Emotional Life Spectrum. So they have a handle on pretty much any angle out there. Now, this is a villain list, so this is bad news for us, or rather bad news for pretty much any world. For starters, they take all of the energy from living creatures. That's how they come together. Nice, teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. Also tears. So off the bat, these guys are just OP. I love the look of these celestial gods though. They each have like their own color. Even if Brian Hitch wrote them into his run with the Justice League, with destruction being the driving force, this is still kind of a villain that even I'll root for. I said it, sue me, what's up?
Number 5, Punchline. So Punchline has to be one of my favorite of the newest villains we've seen. I didn't want to like her when she was announced, especially as I thought she was going to be like some new, younger version of Harley Quinn, which I didn't really think that we needed. But then I met Punchline, and I gotta say, I like Alexis. She's okay by me. Punchline's real name is Alexis Kay, and we learned her backstory in the Joker 80th Anniversary Special. She sought out the Joker believing that his ideology matched or at least suited her own. She has displayed some pretty sweet chemistry and toxicology skills, making Batman his own special version of the Joker Venom. How nice. Which tormented him through most of the Joker War story, and has proven how deadly she can be with her stilettos when she managed to land a life-threatening hit on Harley Quinn. I really hope we get more Punchline in the near future. I was pleasantly surprised by how different and interesting she is in comparison to Harley Quinn, and I also just love her character design. Punchline first appeared in Batman Volume 3 in issue 89.
Number 4, Eradicator 2. With that name alone, oh boy, you already know what's coming. The Eradicator 2 was created, of course, after DC's Rebirth with the absence of the original Eradicator. Another big bad version was bound to show up. I mean, we expected it. So of course, this is the newer version of Eradicator from the 80s comics, but the best part is that he still has the 80s look. He's got the retro, badass glasses, which are such a nice touch, by the way. Just by looking at this guy, you can tell he's the coolest. Created by General Zod, this AI ended up taking on the physicalities of Superman, hence the everything about him. So when this badass AI is close to a yellow sun, he gets powered up real good. I'm talking the usual super strength, stamina, flight, speed, and he's basically invincible. A cool but scary power that he also obtains is that of energy manipulation, because he's made of course, pure energy. Eradicator wasn't used too much, but I feel like Eradicator 2, since his first new appearance in Superman Volume 4 Issue 2, at the very end we see his rebirth, and it's beautiful. Once the Kryptonian gene is detected back on the Fortress of Solitude, energy forms all around the room. There's an ID badge, some glasses, and then bam, all this mixed into one. You get this bright pop, and his opening line being, "We are here, we will save you too, Kal-El." And it's sick. He's like basically Terminator with a cape. He's got the look, there's this energy coming from him. I would love to see this guy go head to head with Henry Cavill. I mean, maybe we'll get more of a dark alternate version with the Snyder cut of the Justice League, but fine, that'll have to do in the meantime. For now.
Number 3, Clown Hunter. Clown Hunter is just a kid who stepped up to the plate when it came to taking back Gotham during the Joker War. Seeing his neighborhood being ravaged and attacked by the Joker gang, and having lost his parents to the Joker, he was inspired to start cracking skulls, which is exactly what he did, defending the innocent with a baseball bat with a batarang attached to it, to kill any clowns that crossed his path. His true name is Bao Pham, and at the end of the event, he was confronted by Batman himself, who suggested that he seek help and speak to a therapist. He also offered to mentor Clown Hunter, but warned him that he would not tolerate the teenage Bao killing anyone else, no matter their crime. Clown Hunter seemed interested in getting help, but only after his work was done. Clown Hunter first appeared in issue 96 of 2016's Batman.
Number 2, the Batman who laughs. Bruce Wayne, but from Earth 22, is a touch different than the one that we know best. The Dark Universe is a very special and very vast place filled with alternate versions of characters, but one of the most notable has to be the Batman who laughs. Making his first appearance in Dark Days, the casting, this Bruce Wayne has, well, of course, similar origins that we're familiar with. Parents were murdered, became a crime-fighting bat, protects Gotham, all the good stuff. But this Joker changed his path up. Joker began murdering everybody in Gotham. He bombed a hospital and then shot the parents of the kids. Like, he's twisted, and he's also dying at the same time. He's dying from the chemicals that made him become the Joker in the first place. So of course he wanted to take everybody out with him. So when Batman stepped in and killed him by breaking his neck, the toxins from the Joker were inhaled by poor Batsy, causing this to happen. So a day later, he's joined by Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, Red Robin, who were training in the Batcave, and then Batman then shot all of them. And then this is just the beginning. This insane clown Batsy is terrifying and entertaining in all of the right ways.
Number 1, Ghostmaker. We don't know a lot about Ghostmaker yet. He first appeared in Volume 3 of Batman, the current run, in issue 100 as a mysterious figure. And so far, he stayed that way. We'll likely see more of him in issue 103, but so far we know he's not as new as he might appear. In fact, in Batman issue 102, Batman seems to recognize him, leading many to speculate as to which old rival Ghostmaker's true identity could actually be. We do know that he's here to challenge Batman for Gotham and to provide the people with an alternate option when it comes to choosing their hero for their city. He also comes with a ton of tech, and at this point is probably going to quickly end up being better equipped than Batman himself when it comes to gadgets, as Bruce just lost all of his fortune to Lucius Fox. Well, he gave it away, that is. And Lucius is out of the Batman game. Bruce is on his own this time around when it comes to equipping himself, and he only has his own ingenuity and the help of the Bat fam to back him up.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Talia al Ghul. She's the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Assassins, and she's constantly being torn between her father and the Caped Crusader himself. Now, in Batman's Son of the Demon, the name should tip you off as to what happens. But by the end of the story, Talia ended up giving birth to a child, and Batman was the father. Meet Damian Wayne. He was perfect. I mean, genetically speaking of course. He was born from an artificial womb and he was supposed to join the League of Assassins and be a great warrior. That was the plan. You know, having a powerful skill set in martial arts before he was even a teenager, Talia al Ghul explained who he was and left him with his father, Batman. Now, she was hoping that this would cause problems for Bruce Wayne and that this would disrupt Batman's work. You know, getting the little one to spy on Batman and stir up some drama with Tim Drake in the meantime. He was actually quite eager to replace Tim Drake as Batman's wingman. So troubled Damian Wayne grabs another Robin costume, added some of that League of Assassins gear he was used to, and then he took out the villain Spook. In a rather dark way, too. The guy's wild. At one point, he ended up sucker punching Tim Drake off of a T-Rex model. Sometimes those villain genes just get carried down no matter how the kid gets born. And before we continue on with this list of bad moms, guys, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you want. You should, because it really helps out our studio quite a bit. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for your continuous support. Now let's get back to this video. Number 9, Superwoman, Earth 3. She made her comic book debut not too long ago in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 23. Lois Lane of Earth 3, that is an Amazon native and a member of the crime syndicate. Now, she was in a relationship with her teammate Ultraman, but that relationship was pretty toxic. So she veered off and had an affair with another teammate, Owlman. And then she also had another affair, but this time with Alexander Luthor. So she had this handy little tool that helped her get all these side romances in the works. She had the lasso of submission, which enslaves others to her will. So it was only a matter of time before she got pregnant with one of these guys. Now, supposedly, the child was Ultraman's. But, she told Owlman that it was his. She was manipulating both men. Her plan was much deeper though. When the Injustice League had attacked, they freed the prisoner Mazaz, who Superman then revealed was the true father all along. So yeah, she manipulated the Syndicate into bringing him back as a prisoner, where she helped him go against Black Adam and Bizarro. And honestly, this whole love triangle or love hexagon is definitely Bizarro. That's the word I would use for it. Number 8, Catwoman. Selina Kyle first appeared in comics way back in 1940 in Batman issue 1. She's had a pretty on and off complicated relationship with Batman, so it was just a matter of time before the two got really close. In Huntress issue 1, the Huntress of course is introduced as Helena Bartolini, but there was another Huntress in the comics as well, and she was the daughter of Bruce and Selina. She was introduced to readers in Huntress volume 3, issue 1. Now this all happened on Earth 2 as well. See, Helena is a lawyer for Cranston, Grayson, and Wayne, but the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. So she's got a few tricks up her sleeve as well. When she was only 19 years old, her mother, who used to be Catwoman, passed away in a tragic mishap, no thanks to this henchman named Silky Cernak. He was the reason behind a photo that came up, and it showed Selina Kyle as Catwoman attacking a police officer. So of course Helena was pretty upset, and she wanted to get even. They're making her mom look bad. So she took a page out of her parents' book and became the Huntress. Now she went after Silky Smooth Cernak and then got him arrested, and her mother wasn't even as bad as she thought, because the photo, it was tampered with. It wasn't even a legit photo. But she ended up keeping the suit and attitude, and eventually wound up on the Justice Society of America. And also, recently this year, readers got their first look at Jim Lee's variant cover for Batman and Catwoman issue 4, where Helena Wayne stands front and center, and in this version, she looks really, really cool. If you haven't been reading that run, you're missing out. And coming in at number 7, Volthoom, Earth 15. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern Annual Volume 5, Issue 1 back in 2012, also known as the First Lantern. So like I said, he's from the future on Earth 15 in the year 3079, and after his world was on the brink of destruction, him and his mother used the newly discovered emotional electromagnetic spectrum, which is a multiversal force powered by all life in the multiverse. Then they used this power to create the Travel Lantern, and then Volthoom left to find safety while his mother stayed behind and unfortunately, in superhero fashion, died by being crushed by a building right as he left. So he traveled for weeks through space and time in desperate hopes to find something to save his home world. So he goes to Earth 17 and uses the spectrum to resurrect plant life. Cool, not much more to do here, let's go next. He tries Earth 47, then they use the spectrum to create nice music. Cool. And next, he went to Earth 3, where he met a sorcerer named Mordu, in which he creates a power ring out of a piece of his soul. And that ring, of course, being called the Ring of Volthoom. He finally found Earth 0, where he acted as the law and order. Eventually, Volthoom's mind was corrupted from the spectrum, and he becomes insane and tries to kill the Malthusians, who had created a great heart battery beforehand. Not cool, Volthoom. More like not cool Tomb. Nah, I tried. And number 6, Daniel West, Reverse Flash. Making his first appearance in the Flash Volume 40, Issue O, Issue 0, Daniel West is a classic speedster. His costume is the first thing you notice when looking at this version of the Reverse Flash. His suit is made partially from the monorail that he crashed into, so it acts like an armor around him, which is super cool looking. It was merged to him. So after an accident where you get super speed, becoming a supervillain isn't too hard of a lane to slip into, especially when your mother dies while giving birth to you and your father is an aggressive alcoholic. Yeah, Daniel's upbringing is super tragic, so he uses the Speed Force in attempts to go back in time and prevent this from happening at all costs. So if anybody has to die in the meantime, so be it. His goal is to take out other speedsters and use their Speed Force to help him achieve his goal. Sad times indeed. Number 5, William Cobb, the Talon. He made his comic book debut in 2011 back in Batman Volume 2, Issue 2, and the Talon is an assassin for the Court of Owls, who claims to have killed several Wayne family members, including Bruce Wayne's great-great-grandfather, Alan Wayne. Not a bad resume. He began his early days juggling baseballs on the street just to get by, and after his father had passed away tragically while building a bridge for Cameron Kane, he began his early days juggling baseballs on the street just to get by, after his father had passed away tragically while building a bridge for Cameron Kane. So he would earn some money and then sneak it into his mother's purse. What a gem. And then one day somebody was watching his act and then got pickpocketed. So William Cobb noticed and hucked one of these baseballs at him, saving the day. The man offered him a job at a circus as a thank you. So he started using knives instead of baseballs to amp up the act, keep it fresh, and eventually met his love, Amelia, back when he returned to Gotham. Now he was a celebrity though. Amelia's father didn't like the two in love, so he told William to beat it. Amelia at this time was actually pregnant. Ruh-roh. So Cobb joined the Court of Owls and became one of the Talons, and went back to Amelia's house to kidnap his own son. His son ends up becoming the Gray Son of Gotham, John Grayson's father. Number 4, Oblivion. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern New Guardians Annual Issue 2 back in 2014, Oblivion is made of Kyle Rayner's rage, fear, and anxiety. He's the physical form of all of those traits and even believes himself to be Kyle Rayner. He stayed in his apartment and even tricked Carol into thinking that he was the real deal. So he has powers that allow him to shapeshift, teleport, he can project vast amounts of energy that match a white lantern, and he can also create illusions of people and objects. So one day Oblivion teleported Carol and himself to Arizona, where he used his powers to alter all the people in the buildings there. He's kind of annoying like that, Number 3, Gotham Girl, aka Claire Clover. She made her debut in DCU Rebirth Issue 1 in 2016. Her and her brother Hank both traded in years of their lives for superpowers. So they can either live 2 years at Superman's level, or live a few hours with godlike levels, which is really interesting. If you had this power, which way would you go? Let us know in the comments, because I'm curious. So Batman ended up taking Claire and Hank under his wing, but unfortunately, Psycho Pirate's mind manipulation ended up getting the better of him. Hank ended up using all of his life force just to defeat the Justice League. After his death, Claire wasn't doing too well. Batman even told her his real identity and how he sometimes likes to talk to his dead mom as well. How lovely, what a nice little bonding moment. Now, by the name of this list, you won't be too shocked to hear that she had also been secretly working with Bane to break Batman on a psychological level. Not cool. And number 2, the Court of Owls. I mentioned them earlier, so I figured since they're going to be in the new Robert Pattinson Batman flick coming out in 2022, they're worth a bigger mention. So since the New 52, the Court of Owls have picked up steam. Created by Scott Snyder, this new secret society looks as cool as they are. They're an ancient group that has been secretly controlling Gotham for a while. Like a while. They even go back to some early Bruce Wayne days, hence them being part of the Matt Reeves Batman plot coming up. Their top assassin, of course, being the guy I mentioned earlier, Talon. So he ended up attacking him, and then Bruce decided to do some detective work, discovering the secret society. So he finds out that the Court of Owls actually has secret headquarters in every building made by the Wayne Trust. Sneaky. Gotta love secret cults. And finally, number 1, Mr. Bloom. One of the coolest looking guys on this list, Mr. Bloom made his debut in 2015 in Batman Volume 2, Issue 43. He began his journey by stealing high-tech seeds. Yep, you heard me, I said seeds. Makes sense why he's got the flower on his face. It goes well with the terrifying Slender Man look. I wonder what it smells like. Probably death or daffodils, one of the two. So after he took these super seeds, he got some superpowers, super strength, elasticity, hence the lankiness, and he could project flames and ice from his hands. Pretty neat. So he decides to give these seeds to a select few who desire superpowers. The only cost? Their life. I think next year for Halloween I'm gonna go as Mr. Bloom. Either him or Orlando Bloom. One of the Blooms for sure, I'm just not sure which one, you know?
Number 10, the Maker. The Maker is one of the creepiest villains out there, but at the same time, he also seems like one of the saddest as well, at least at the beginning of Ultimate Invasion. And honestly, there are undertones of that throughout, I would say, the Ultimate continuity for him. Who is the Maker? He is the version of Reed Richards who we normally know as Mr. Fantastic, who hails from the reality of Earth 1610, known as the Ultimate or Ultimates reality. What makes him so scary? Perhaps the realization that Reed potentially makes an even more formidable villain than he does a hero. He's like Reed without the moral code. I mean, he is Reed without the moral code. That's literally who he is. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us you love us by clicking that subscribe. And make sure you have that bell on so you don't miss out on any of our good old nerdy notifications. Number 9. Reavers. Over the years, the Reavers have become scarier and scarier as a group of villains. Initially, the Reavers were members of the Hellfire Club, in a way belonging to the Hellfire Club's elite team of bodyguards, their own personal militia known as the Hellfire Knight. After being taken by Mojo and repurposed, they were turned into cyborgs, who have become more and more horrific as the years have progressed in terms of their appearance. The Reavers would go on to become affiliated with Spiral, Lady Deathstrike, and of course, Donald Pierce. Initially, they just look like eccentric 80s and 90s villains, but in the modern age, they look more like mad science experiments gone wrong, with the weapons that they wield becoming integrated with their own bodies, a part of that. Before, they were some of my favorite comedic relief in terms of comic book villains, and now they're more like nightmare fuel. Number 8. Mistress Death. What is one of the greatest fears that most people have? Death, of course. The end of life and the journey into the unknown. I think we're the most afraid of death because we just don't really know what comes next. It is the end of something, which honestly already tends to scare us humans, just the idea of something ending, but it also represents a massive change for us, moving from the realm of the living to the non-living, and whatever comes after that, if anything does at all. Hence, Mistress Death has to be one of the most terrifying villains we have at Marvel Comics. Now, granted, Mistress Death isn't really a straight up villain. She's less of a villain and more of like a concept. Everything must die, and we've also seen what the world would be like without her doing her job. See Marvel's Cancerverse. Yeah, not so pretty. But at the same time, the idea of death still scares us, and although she isn't really taking life maliciously, it's easy to see her as a villain when she preys on the fears of so many in the Marvel multiverse, and the fears of us as readers in the real world too. Number 7. Malice. When it comes to Malice, I think the reason why she scares me so much is my fear of possession. I just think of Malice taking over people's bodies, making heroes perform as they normally would not, and I'm honestly terrified of that. Malice has been a few different people in the comics, and I'm not sure if we've ever really clarified if they were the same entity or not as some of the other Malices that we've had. There is Malice as in Alice McAllister, who can exist as a purely psionic being and has done so in the past, possessing various X-Men members such as Lorna Dane, Psylocke, and even Storm for a time. And there is Malice as in the darker persona of Susan Storm, the Invisible Woman, which takes control of the Invisible Woman and who apparently was made manifest during the Psycho Man's attack on New York. Pretty sure these are two separate entities, but I think it's also really interesting that they both kind of like possess people and they're also both named Malice, so I just decided to include them together because you never know. You never know. Those could be connected at some point.
Number 6. Agatha Harkness. Like a few of these villains, when we first met Agatha Harkness in Fantastic Four number 95 from October 1969, she was already elderly. She started out as the nanny for the newly born Franklin Richards, and using her magical powers, she even saved the Fantastic Four from the Frightful Four, a handful of other villains, and also helped Franklin when his powers first started to emerge. But she went on to have an interesting relationship with the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, but also her mother, Natalia Maximoff. That's because this sweet nanny, Agatha, is actually an incredibly ancient sorcerer who was around to remember the sinking of Atlantis nearly 18,500 years ago. And she was probably the most powerful of the original witches during the Salem witch trials, an event that she actually supported as she thought it would cull the weak magic users who held them all collectively back. While Agatha is not technically immortal, her use of magic coupled with her extended lifespan has made her basically the same thing. Number 5. Kang the Conqueror. Kang is a little bit of an interesting pick for this list, as he totally can be stopped and has been multiple times. Thanks to the advanced time period he comes from, Nathaniel Richards has an increased lifespan, making him look like 40 years old when he's actually 70 years old. That's fine, that doesn't make him unstoppable or immortal. What makes him immortal is a couple of things. For starters, as most people know, Kang has a huge relationship with time. A version of this guy exists at almost all moments of the time stream, and not just one version of him, as there have been Kangs from different universes that have shown up as well. So not only can Nathaniel Richards show up at any point in the time stream in any of his numerous identities that all have their own long history, but his alternate universe versions are almost always set to make an appearance in his place. And then, on top of that, until recently, Nathaniel had the ability to transfer his consciousness to another body whenever he did actually pass away. So, yeah, he's kind of immortal. Number 4, That Which Endures. That Which Endures is basically like a bacteria. All the way back at the very beginning of life, billions of years ago, when the first cells split on Earth and multicellular life forms began to exist, That Which Endures attached itself to the resulting organism and has been multiplying and sticking with whatever species it determined was the most dominant in order to ensure its own survival. It basically chooses which species are successful, and a small part of it exists in every member of that species. At first, that was dinosaurs, and then eventually humans. Around every 100,000 years, That Which Endures will just pop up in a large number of that species, look around, and see if any other species is beginning to come out on top, which is when it would jump ship to that new species. When it did this in Avengers West Coast number 47 in 1989, it noticed that there was a super cool and powerful evolution in Homo sapiens known as Homo superior, aka the mutants. That Which Endures chose the Scarlet Witch as the first mutant it would try to jump to, using her to destroy Homo sapiens. Luckily though, the Great Lakes Initiative alongside Vision were able to stop this from happening, and we haven't really heard anything of this semi-sentient organism ever since. Number 3, The Beast. The ninja clan known as the Hand has had many run-ins with different heroes over the years, but none of those heroes have had as much interaction with the shadowy group as Daredevil. His mentor, Stick, and his sometimes girlfriend, Elektra, have history with the clan as well, and he's never been particularly fond of them. But when he seemed to secure control over the clan, he decided to put their skills to good use. He moved them to Hell's Kitchen and started up a headquarters and prison known as Shadowland. He changed the Hand into what he thought was a force for good, but as his time with the Hand went on, he seemed to be the one who was changing, becoming more aggressive and drastic with his methods of crime fighting. He started to butt heads with other heroes and even became responsible for the passing of his adversary, Bullseye, again. Now it turns out that this brutal new Daredevil was actually being possessed by an ancient demon called the Beast, who is the source of the Hand's mystical powers and has been the reason the clan was as morally dubious as it is. Daredevil was secretly manipulated by the Snake Root, a small faction of the Hand that worshipped the Beast. They manipulated Daredevil into undergoing the ritual of the Black Flower. So when Daredevil removed the problem of Bullseye from existence, it completed the ritual and the Beast possessed him and corrupted the people of Hell's Kitchen until Iron Fist exorcised the demon from that. Number 2, Uranos. As you might be able to gather from their name, Eternals are, well, eternal, meaning they are immortal, and some of them are scary powerful. The Eternal known as Uranos first ever appeared in Marvel What If number 24 in September of 1980, in a story that explained the origins of the Eternals. In this story, Uranos is trying to convince his brother, Kronos, that the Eternals should use their massive amounts of power to just take over the world. He believed the Eternals would best fulfill their duties if they exterminated both the deviants and the humans on Earth, all life outside the universe as well, and imprison the Celestials, but his brothers, Kronos and Oceanus, luckily disagreed, sparking the Eternals' civil war. The war culminated in his defeat and banishment to the planet Uranus. Surprise though, this isn't what actually happened. The Uranos who was banished to another planet was actually a clone of the real Uranos who was banished to the Exclusion, as he tied his own passing to the destruction of Earth, meaning if he goes, we all go. Which is why he was sent to the Exclusion, only able to leave an hour at a time at the discretion of the Prime Eternal. Most recently, Uranos was used by Druig to wipe out a massive amount of the mutant population when a war between the Eternals and the mutants broke out. And finally, in at number 1 today is Shadow King. Amal Farouk was a pretty nasty mutant that Charles Xavier had a run-in with in Cairo way back in the day before he started the X-Men. Amal attacked Xavier and then tried to convince Charles to partner with him in his nefarious various ways. Luckily, Charles refused, challenged Farouk to a psychic duel, and won, which seemed to take Farouk's life, and he moved on to create the X-Men in order to combat evil mutants in the world like Farouk himself. What no one knew until about 150 issues later is that Farouk was actually merged with a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of human consciousness who had been possessing various individuals since the dawn of human history, called the Shadow King. Years and years later, the Shadow King and Farouk, who had been floating around in the astral plane, made a move to attack Xavier again, taking over the new mutant Karma due to her own mutant ability of possession, making her vulnerable. He was eventually defeated, but this multiversal entity would go on to possess a whole number of powerful people, mainly telepaths like Marvel Girl and Psylocke, whose energy the Shadow King would feed off of. But there have been many others who have been possessed, corrupted, and misled by this powerful telepathic entity in not only the 616 universe, but all over the multiverse.
Number 10. Dormammu. One of the most powerful magical villains in the Marvel Universe is definitely Dormammu, especially if you end up going to the Dark Dimension to face him. Here, Dormammu reigns supreme, and so his power is considered limitless. I don't know about you, but if Dormammu is ruling, I'm pretty much just going to stay out of the Dark Dimension, I think. I think that's a good idea if he's there. At one point, Doctor Strange even ended up as Dormammu's prisoner in the comics, trapped in the Dark Dimension alongside his defenders, and for a surprisingly lengthy period of time too. In fact, Strange almost gave up hope that he'd actually even get out at one point. Dormammu himself is composed of mystical energy. He's basically like a big ball of flaming magic. He's virtually immortal, while in his dimension can manipulate matter as he sees fit, can control the elements, and can change shape and size at will. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know that you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9. Dracula. When we think of scary villains in general, many of us probably normally think of scary monsters that we've seen in movies and read about in iconic literature, like Dracula. Well, Dracula, thanks to Dracula being considered public domain, he also exists in most comic book realities as well, including that of Marvel Comics. And guess what? Doctor Strange has also fought against him. In fact, if it weren't for Doctor Strange, Dracula may have never been defeated. Doctor Strange not only defeated Dracula, but at the same time also successfully defeated all vampires on Earth. It's true. How did he do this? By possessing the knowledge of and utilizing the Montesi formula. This isn't Strange's only tie to the world of vampires either. Doctor Strange also has a brother who became a vampire, and he has crossed paths with Chthon, who is believed to have been the one to create a few different kinds of supernatural beings, including, you guessed it, vampires. Number 8. Cyttorak. Doctor Strange actually wields the bands of Cyttorak, tying him directly to this villain. But you probably know Cyttorak better for his influence over Juggernaut, the X-Men villain who is the stepbrother of Professor Charles Xavier, aka Professor X. Cain Marko, Charles' stepbrother, was the avatar of Cyttorak for a long time, having come into contact with Cyttorak's gem and gaining immense power, also being made to act as Cyttorak's agent on Earth. Cyttorak himself is a demon and has also been worshipped as a god. He is focused on and symbolizes heavily the concept of destruction, known as the Lord of Oblivion and the Destroyer. He was at his most powerful when he was on Earth, but eventually became banished from Earth and was forced to return to his home dimension known as the Crimson Cosmos. He actually made his first full appearance in Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme issue number 44. I wonder actually, remember how we used to say that Cyclops' eyes are like a portal to a world filled with energy? That was a thing people used to say. I wonder if that was the same world that Cyttorak was from, just because like Crimson Cosmos makes me think of a world that's just pure like red energy. I don't know if that's what it's like in Cyttorak's dimension, but that's a headcanon that's in my mind now, so. Number 7. Three Mothers. Death of Doctor Strange is an overarching story and miniseries that really has it all. It has drama, mystery, romance, heartbreak, and of course, lots of horrifying moments to just round it all out. The story delivers on what the title promises, the death of Doctor Strange. After his death, it is revealed Strange had some fail-safes in place to help him actually solve his own murder. A past version of Strange appears and ends up hot on the trail of solving his own murder with the help of magical allies such as Wong and Clea. We're also introduced to the Three Mothers, villains who live to feed another possibly even more terrifying entity who's actually their own master, known as the Peregrine Child.
Number 6. Null. Null existed long before even the Celestials in the 6th incarnation of the multiverse, where he existed in basically nothingness. But when the Celestials created the 7th multiverse, Null was mad that he got woken up. So he created the all-black Necro Sword sword and beheaded a Celestial. For this insane feat of power, he was banished to another void of nothingness where he improved on the sword and eventually broke out into the universe, taking out various gods until he lost the Necrosword after being defeated by a mysterious god of light. Null then goes on to make more and more symbiotes. Yes, the symbiotes like Venom and Carnage, who all share a hive mind under the control of Null himself. These symbiotes, who are all terrifying in their own right, eventually rebel and imprison Null inside the symbiote homeworld, Clintar. In the 2020 King in Black story, Null escapes, again, and heads to Earth where he faces off against literally all the heroes and even some of the villains. He's one of the strongest villains in Marvel Comics. He is immortal, super strong, instantly heals, can create an unlimited amount of symbiotes, some of which who have been incredibly powerful on their own, and he can control them all. The Silver Surfer had to use all the reserves of the Power Cosmic to just temporarily stop Null. Thor, using the Power Cosmic and the Thor Force, was no match for Null at all. Null has awoken, enslaved, and controlled Celestials and even defeated the Sentry, ripping him in half and absorbing the Void, who we just talked about. The only thing that defeated him was Eddie Brock's Venom wielding the Unipower, which is Captain Universe, the protector of the universe and the opposite to literally everything that Null represents.
Number 5, the Apocalypse Twins. So this duo made their first appearance in issue number 5 of Uncanny Avengers, which was only published in 2013, ergo making them the most recent villains to come into the universe that I'll be discussing today. So they're mutants and the twin descendants of the big supervillain Apocalypse, so yay! Being bad comes pretty honestly to them. Okay, technically their real names are Uriel and Iman, and they were initially created by writer Rick Remender and artist Olivier Coipel, but Apocalypse Twins does sound infinitely cooler. So they were raised by Clan Akaba, a cult dedicated to their dear dad, which aimed to bring about the return of the powerful mutant leader. In terms of specific scary powers, Uriel possesses the ability to manipulate and transmute organic matter, including the power to heal and create life, while Iman has time manipulation abilities, allowing her to see into the future and alter the time stream. The duo are skilled manipulators who use their powers and charisma to sway others to their cause, just like, your everyday narcissists. So that's another little tick on the pass list from me. The twins believed that they could save mutant kind by eliminating threats to mutants and humankind alike, and had a twisted vision of a better world and sought to achieve it through drastic means. I hate sounding like a broken record, but jeepers. Look, a perfect world does not exist when created by force. In terms of, the hell they've unleashed specifically on the Avengers, they created a team of the 4 Horsemen of Death to execute their plans and clashed with the Avengers and the X-Men, leading to a major conflict known as the Ragnarok Now storyline. The storylines involving the Apocalypse Twins had lasting repercussions in the Marvel Universe, affecting relationships among mutants and superheroes. Their parentage plays obviously a very significant role in their menacing presence. As the offspring of Apocalypse, one of the most powerful and iconic villains in Marvel history, their genetic lineage implies an inherent potential for immense power and malevolence.
Number 4, Chthon. Chthon stands as one of the most powerful demons in existence in Marvel Comics, and his ancient origins make him comparable to the very archetype of evil itself. He predates even the likes of Mephisto and is often regarded as the closest embodiment of the devil in demonology in Marvel Comics. Chthon and his Ngarai once ruled over Earth until they faced an assault by the angel Lucifer, an event that occurred long before Lucifer's rebellion against heaven and his ascent to rule over hell as the devil. Chthon's influence extends to the very roots of dark supernatural entities, including witches, werewolves, and vampires. He holds dominion over the most potent form of magic, known as Chaos Magic, the same mystical force harnessed by the Scarlet Witch herself. To put this into perspective, Scarlet Witch has reshaped the whole of reality with just a fraction of Chthon's power. His counterpart, Oshter, is one of the essential components of the Vishanti, which is a triumvirate that actively opposes Chthon and supplies Doctor Strange with his power. In response to Chthon's malevolent Darkhold, they created the Book of Vishanti, a beacon of light against the Book of Darkness. Even powerful beings such as Dormammu and Mephisto invoke Chthon's name when casting their most formidable spells. Chthon's presence alone nearly corrupted and permanently incapacitated the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange. Defeating him is an arduous task, and even when achieved, it often results in his banishment back to his personal dimension, the Other Realm, where he's basically untouchable.
Number 3, Korvac. So Michael Korvac, commonly known as Korvac, first appeared in issue number 3 of Giant-Sized Defenders back in 1975. Created by writer Steve Gerber and artist Jim Starlin, Korvac is quite the complex character with a unique and powerful storyline. He started as an ordinary human computer technician, but underwent a transformation after encountering the Badoon, an alien race. This transformation granted in him incredible powers, including, energy manipulation, telekinesis, and matter transmutation, making him pretty near godlike in terms of abilities. Yikes! Korvac possesses nearly limitless powers, including, once again, the ability to manipulate reality itself. He's also not only physically powerful, but incredibly intelligent. Driven by a desire for order and perfection, he embarked on a quest to reshape the universe according to his own vision. While his motives weren't purely evil, the way he pursued them brought him into conflict with the Avengers, ergo how he earned a spot on our list today. One of his most notable storylines, which was the Korvac saga, is a pivotal moment in Marvel Comics history, since it challenged the Avengers on multiple levels, both morally and physically, and had pretty far-reaching consequences. Once again, Korvac's godlike powers, intelligence, and the existential threats he posed to the entire universe made him a pretty memorable villain. His character is a great example of how complexity and moral ambiguity can add depth to a supervillain, making him more than just, a one-dimensional antagonist.
Number 2, Carnage. The red symbiotes always seem to be the worst of the worst, and the one that would be born from Venom himself seems to be the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. When Eddie Brock was briefly detached from the Venom symbiote, he was imprisoned, and his cellmate was none other than Cletus Cassidy, a psychotic killer serving 11 consecutive life sentences in Rikers Island. When Venom showed up and bust Eddie out of prison, it produced its first offspring as a result of Thanos seeking the Infinity Gems out in space. I don't know how those two connect, but that's just what happened. This offspring would be Carnage, and it was left in the cell when Venom and Eddie escaped, bonding with Cletus Cassidy through a wound in his hand. Meaning, the bond they formed was on a blood level, and it would be nearly impossible to break that. Despite that, there have been other characters that have taken on the symbiote. Norman Osborn was a notable one when he became the Red Goblin and was absolutely terrifying. And then I would be silly to not mention that the Grendel Dragon symbiote had part of itself merge with Carnage to create an incredibly terrifying version of the symbiote known as Dark Carnage that absolutely put up a hell of a fight against Venom and others. Now, Carnage is back yet again, and he is reaching a level of power that puts him on the cosmic map as he is constantly upgrading himself with all kinds of tech and magic to be able to face Eddie Brock, who has become the King in Black of the symbiote race.
Number 1, Thanos. Created by writer and artist Jim Starlin, Thanos made his first appearance in Iron Man issue number 55 back in 1973. He's known for his distinctive appearance and is a towering purple-skinned alien with a heavily muscled physique and deep-set glowing eyes. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanos is obsessed with the concept of death and seeks to impress Mistress Death, a personification of death in the Marvel Universe, and visually speaking, I can't blame him for wanting to impress her. To gain her favor, he often engages in grandiose and destructive acts, including seeking to wipe out half of all life in the universe. Thanos possesses a vast array of superhuman abilities, including super strength, durability, and agility, not to mention that he's highly intelligent and a strategic mastermind. Despite being a villain, he exhibits moral complexity and genuinely believes that his actions are necessary for the greater good, even if they involve mass destruction. The level of delusion there might just be what scares me the most. Oh, and tiny thing, Thanos also poses a cosmic level threat to the entire universe, since his plans often involve consequences on a cosmic scale, making him a particularly dangerous foe. Nope.